I've had the belief that if you have some dry powder and your team is competitive, it gives you perhaps an opportunity during the trade deadline or at other points prior to improve the club. It doesn't have to be that way, but ideally optionality is nice. And then, a team that or a season in which revenue is outpacing budget and projections just gives you that much more room, So, those things can play into, we don't say, okay, we've studied the numbers and this is the payroll number. It's a little more fluid than you might think as information comes in the season related to revenue, expenses, and all that. And the team performance.
Oh, and the team performance. That's Cardinals president Bill DeWitt III from winter warm-up. If you remember correctly, that's what got a lot of Cardinals fans in a tizzy in the offseason because it was talking about how, we got to make sure that we're bringing in the most money possible and financially put ourselves in the right financial situation. And then, oh, by the way, we care about the on-field product, too. With Tanner Hendrickson and Graham Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario. It is BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN on a Monday, a fresh new week where, T-Bone, I thought we would be coming in today to talk about the down spiral of the Cardinals, to talk about how this team had lost 2 of 3 to the Washington Nationals, how they can't hit left-handed pitching, and how their offense is a little concerning as they continue to fall further out of the wild card spot. But no, John Denton said, boys, do I have a headliner for you.
Why would I want to start my Monday with that?
You want to start positive?
There was no positive from the weekend.
What are you talking about? Well,
they got shellacked by the freaking Nationals for crying out loud.
Let me brighten your spirits a little bit, guys, because from John Denton's piece over the weekend, after the Cardinals had DFA'd Giovanni Gallegos, and it was a trade deadline primer from John Denton. Quote, the Cardinals front office has been informed by management that the club is not positioned to take on significant additional salary in coming years with a trade, per the source. Let me read you another one from Katie Wu of The Athletic, who will join us today at 12 o'clock. President of Baseball Operations John Mozeliak will gladly take any sort of financial relief as he looks to bolster the rotation. The possibility might be increasing the Tommy Edman, a player who has yet to appear in a major league game this season, could help them get in. So not only are we talking about the trade deadline for the Cardinals, but we are officially back into the payroll is a problem for the Cardinals. And we played that cut from Bill DeWitt III because, again, that was in winter warm-up, him talking about financial restrictions and making sure that the team is in a financial good spot. And I think it was in the middle of the season, if I'm not mistaken, T-Bone, that Bill DeWitt III did an interview with Martin Kilcoyne that was talking about the financial problems and kind of pointed the finger at the fans and said, hey, well, this is because there's not a lot of people coming to the games, and if you don't come, we can't spend money. I didn't expect the Cardinals to take this turn as we approach the trade deadline on Tuesday, T-Bone, but that's not a good look. It's not a good look if a team that was sitting in a wild card spot at the All-Star break, who has now lost, 4 of their last 7 games, if I'm not mistaken. You lost the series to the Washington Nationals, you lost the series to the Pirates, and you won the series against the Atlanta Braves. Now you've been pushed further out of a wild card spot. I think you're a game and a half out of the second place spot that you were holding after this National Series loss. And now it's being talked about how if they are going to upgrade at the trade deadline, it's going to come from money being sent out so that they can bring money in. This team is officially in the, hey, we don't have enough money to spend frame.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's the last thing I wanted to see over the weekend because it's not how I like to start my Monday, talking about freaking payroll to begin a 5-day week.
Payroll's always fun, man.
It's infuriating. You know what? It was touching that when I woke up this morning, knowing we were going to be talking about payroll, there was thunder, lightning going on, it was raining, and the wind was blowing like crazy.
That's true.
It just fit the mood for what my Monday feels like.
That's true.
It's frustrating because they've talked about how important it was to rebound in 2024. How, the RSN situation, which my guess, my tinfoil theory is that's the whole reason they're concerned about adding salary next season.
That's a bad situation to be in right now because both sides are just at a stalemate, and it's going to continue that way.
Yeah, they are in a stalemate that's being dragged out through the court system still, which is not a good spot for the Cardinals in terms of that. But, man, it is infuriating because that's next year. now that you're in, money out situation for the right now is the part that's frustrating. I can understand the idea of, hey, we don't want to take on significant payroll for next year. Okay, I disagree with it, but I would hear the argument on that. We're talking about this year, a year in which the Cardinals said, hey, it's important for us to get back to October. It's important that we get to October and get back to that Cardinals brand of baseball. Guys, this team needs help. As we've seen since really the Royals series, where I believe they're 5-9 in that, since the Kansas City Royals series where they got swept in that doubleheader with them.
Yep.
They need help. They have 3, maybe even 4 significant needs. They need a starting pitcher. They need a reliever, at least one of those is from the right side. Maybe arguably a left-handed reliever as well. And they need a right-handed bat. And now we're talking about money in, money out. Ownership's putting all kinds of hamstrings in terms of what is going to be an issue. They've hamstrung the organization in terms of what they can add. And now it seems very hard that they're going to be able to fill all those needs. Look, they're clearly going to be trading Tommy Pham here in the next 48 hours.
Right.
There already seems to be reports that they've already got a deal done. It's just a matter of time before this thing gets announced. Now, what they're getting and where he's going, I don't really know. But they're basically having a salary dump. The Giovanni Gallegos move yesterday, salary dump. I actually think Gallegos been pitching pretty well since he came back from the injured list. And he was arguably your best reliever over the weekend, right next to Brandon Crawford. It's insane that we've gotten to the point that the Cardinals are saying, hey, it's money in, money out for this year. That can't be the situation for St. Louis. I just don't understand how they've gotten to this point, and especially because all offseason long it was, hey, we believe payroll's going up. We're going to be spending more on our 40-man roster by the time we get to the end of the season. That's
Which
not the case clearly right now.
Which they did.
Well, no.
They
they're about where they were last year by the time that they got done with the 40-man roster. I don't care about the money they spent in the offseason. They've got to add to this team. They've got to bring in salary for this team to help them improve.
But what I'm saying is they did that. And this is why it's frustrating. It's absolutely frustrating.
They have not done it. They were at this point last year for their 40-man roster. They said we are going to exceed payroll from last year. They have not done that, and they do not sound like they're going to be doing that.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong in terms of they don't sound like they're not doing that, but the frustration part with this is, I think the Cardinals, we saw this with the Waino thing, where they say one thing, and then they're like, oh, yeah, but it's over here also. It feels just like this is how the Cardinals operate. They'll get the money, they'll make their team competitive, but then they look at it and they say, we can't be spending all of this money. And it's frustrating, but it's also not frustrating because it seems like where the Cardinals are just in their lifespan right now. Like the quote that really stuck out to me from John Denton on this piece was the management that the club is not positioned to take on significant additional salary in coming years via in trade. So like they're not trying to take on contracts for the next couple of years, which means they're not trying to spend more than where they're at right now. And the frustrating part with it is, because again, this is the Cardinals, and it seems like this is how they've been trending the last couple of ways. The frustrating part of it is your team is better than what they were last year, 2 years ago. You're in a position to succeed right now. And instead, as your team has started to down spiral, you look at this and say, well, the only way we can upgrade is if we're sending money out of our team. And I'm sorry, if you look at this roster right now, there's not a lot of places that you can send money out. Tommy Edman saves you a little money. Giovanni Gallegos saves you a little bit of money. If you decide to move on from Dylan Carlson, saves you a little bit of money. All of that little bit of money is maybe one starting pitcher that you can get at the deadline. It's not bringing in a starting pitcher, a reliever, and a bat that can help your offense. So what I'm saying is your team was sitting prime in a wild card spot with the chance to catch the Milwaukee Brewers and has stumbled out of the gate out of the All-Star break. And now that they're stumbling even harder, we get the news that, well, the only way we're going to be able to make additions to this team is if we're sending out money so we can bring in money. Now, maybe the Cardinals can still pull it off. They found a way to trade Harrison Bader and bring in Jordan Montgomery, and that was a trade that helped their team. But the problem is right now, T-Bone, I don't know how you fix all of these holes that you have with this limited payroll. Like, there are not a lot of guys on this major league roster that I look at and I say, well, you can upgrade over that and trade that piece away and save that money. We mentioned three guys that they could reasonably move on from and it not impact their major league club. I think of those three guys, that saves you $14 million, if I'm not mistaken. Gallegos, Tommy Edman, and Dylan Carlson. I don't think that saves you a ton of money to be, hey, we're going to be spenders at the deadline so we can make our team better. You can fill one hole, but with payroll restrictions, you're not filling all three holes.
Yeah. It's going to be tough, and, you know, it makes me think, especially looking at the quote from John Denton of, hey, they don't want to take on significant salary in the coming years via trade. Okay, so then they probably were never in on Zach Eflin, who got dealt on Friday to the Baltimore Orioles, who was somebody on Friday when our show started, we talked about being their number one target. It probably means if Chris Bassett's available, Chris Bassett's not going to be a St. Louis Cardinal because he's got a $22 million salary.
Yep.
Tyler Anderson, probably not a Cardinal. He's making $12 million next season. And it makes me wonder about Erick Fedde and his $7 million that he's going to command next year.
Yeah.
They might be able to fix their needs money in, money out, because they're going to cut about $12 to $14 million in Gio. I assume Carlson, they'll try and look to move here at the deadline, and Tommy Edman for cost control pitching. It's a lot harder of a task, though, now to be moving that money out instead of just saying, hey, let's add to this team. Sure, you could have listened on to Tommy Edman, but Tommy Edman could have been a platoon bat for you in center field with Michael Ciani. And now you potentially arguably getting worse because depending on what that right-handed bat is that you bring in, he may not be able to play center field, and you may be forced to play Michael Ciani against left-handed pitching. So this is definitely a situation where the deadline is much more complicated than it felt about 48 hours ago before we knew of their limitations with their payroll.
So I was already a little upset about that when I read it because, again, Cardinals fans have been dying to see a competitive team since 2022, and then the moment you have one, you just pull the rug out from them and say, nope, sorry, we're not going to be competitive because we can't make payroll. And maybe they find a way to pull this off. But then I read this piece from Ben Hochman on the Post-Dispatch. I just want to read you a little snippet from him. He was talking with Ali Marmol about the urgency from the team at this point of the season. And this quote was from Ollie. Urgency must be everywhere from the club. I'm sorry, this piece is from Ben Hochman. Urgency must be everywhere, from the clubhouse to the front office. 5 of 9 missed postseasons cannot happen. This weekend, many members of the famed 2004 Cardinals were at Busch Stadium for an anniversary celebration. They included Scott Rowland of Cooperstown, who was a trade deadline acquisition. And Scott Rowland spoke about the acquisition of Larry Walker in 2004 and how a move like that ignites a roster, it ignites a fan base, and teams build off of that. To hear that of 20 years ago, where a team went all in and said, nope, we're going to make this team great. Now I understand what happened in that season, but it still was exciting. To now the payroll limitations of money in, money out, and you are limited to who you're bringing in, it puts this team in a really tough spot with their fan base. And I want to hear from you today. We're going to be taking your mic drops in the 12 o'clock hour of your thoughts when you heard John Denton's quote about payroll, money going in, money coming out for this team with the trade deadline on Tuesday. You can send us your mic drops over on the 101 ESPN app. You can text us on our Air Comfort Service text line at 314-399-9646. You can also comment up on our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. So all 3 places are where you can get involved with the program today. And again, the big topic is John Denton's quote talking about the Cardinals front office basically being told by ownership that there's no more payroll to go. If you're bringing in money, you need to get rid of money. So we'll discuss that. We'll get to your mic drops and comments on that in the 12 o'clock hour. But coming up next, the Cardinals on-field product is still struggling, and the main piece on the pitching staff, Sonny Gray, has not looked like himself as of late. What does that mean for this team? We'll discuss that next here on 101 ESPN.
paying off. Garcia with a shot to right center. That's going to plug the gap. Yepes will score easily. Keibert Ruiz to third. Oh, they're going to send him. The throw is cut off.
Oh, man.
And the Nats lead 2-0. Yep. Yepes with another base hit. Abrams scores easily. Heading for third, Jesse Winker. And one Yepes. First time back to St. Louis as a Nat. 3 for 3.
So that was the call on Friday when Sonny Gray was on the mound, courtesy of the Washington Nationals broadcast team, as his line against the Washington Nationals in a loss, 5 innings, 7 hits, 5 earned runs, 3 walks. Strikeout stuff is still there and has been there all season, 7 total strikeouts, but it was a loss, his 10th of the season his loss for the Cardinals. It was a no decision for Sonny Gray, who's 10-6 on the season. And along with Tanner Hendrickson and Graham Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario. Here are the last 5 starts for Sonny Gray. It has not gone well. And for a guy who is the ace of this roster, you can't afford to lose Sonny Gray. His last 5 starts have been 28 1/3 innings pitched, a 6.7 ERA. Teams are hitting .331 against him with a .568 slug and a .928 OPS. In the previous 7 starts from Sonny Gray, so this goes back to prior to the All-Star break, 42 innings, a 2.6 ERA. Teams are hitting .145 against him with a .241 slug and .462 OPS. That was an ace. What you have right now is a guy who's pitching like a 3. And the problem with it, T-Bone, is it's not just when Sonny Gray struggles. It's when Sonny Gray struggles, this rotation suffers. And I think that makes sense because they are led by Sonny Gray. That's what that signing was. He was supposed to be the ace of this team that carries them to the promised land. In the stretch of the last 5 starts for Sonny Gray, with his 6.7 ERA, the Cardinals have the 24th ranked ERA in Major League Baseball of 5.2. And in the previous 5 starts, when he was pitching like an ace with a 2.6 ERA, the Cardinals' rotation was 4th in Major League Baseball of ERA with a 3.4 ERA. So I don't know what's wrong with Sonny Gray. I can't believe it's fatigue because the Cardinals have done a very good job of managing it. They're making sure that he gets out of games when he feels like he doesn't have his best stuff left, which, we have our own opinions on that. But if Sonny Gray believes what's going to take him through the rest of the season, then that's great. But we're talking about the guy that is supposed to be the stopper for you. And your stopper has given up 5, 3, and 5 earned runs per game in his last 4 starts. And if this is how it's going to go, then your biggest need, obviously, is a starting pitcher. Because if Sonny Gray is gone, Kyle Gibson has struggled in his last 4 starts. Miles Mikolas has been okay in his last 4 starts. Palante's been your best pitcher. And I don't know if Palante's in this rotation beyond the trade deadline. So they'll have to figure out what's gone wrong with Sonny Gray. But if you don't get that fixed, that could be the recipe for disaster for this Cardinals' strength, which is their pitching.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the Sonny Gray struggles, I think you're back into one of those just weird 5-6 game spells. We saw this early on in the season when Sonny Gray struggled after he came back from the IL. He had a couple good starts, and then it went south again. I'm not worried about Sonny Gray as a whole. I think what it shows you, those numbers that you read off that I found last night of, hey, here's what the rotation does when Sonny Gray is going well, and here's what the rotation does when Sonny Gray struggles. And that makes sense because Sonny Gray is going to be the guy that's going to be, like you said, the stopper for your rotation. It just shows the Cardinals' need for getting an upgrade at that number 2 spot for me.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily worried about Sonny Gray because I think he's going to figure it out. He's got 3.79 ERA, which is ballooned because of the last handful of starts. But we've seen Sonny Gray when he's right. He's got the best stuff on the staff and some of the best stuff in the National League. It's why he finished second in Cy Young voting last year when he was in the AL with the Minnesota Twins. I think what it shows, though, is that the Cardinals are desperately searching for that number 2, and they still have got to upgrade in that 2 spot. Kyle Gibson's a guy that struggles in the second half. He had a weird start over the weekend just because of the way that the weather played out. I don't read anything into that. We'll see what he looks like when he gets a normal routine once again. But the Sonny Gray struggles are hampering the Cardinals right now, but I'm not worried about it long term. Sonny Gray's still the guy that I trust to go out there and start game 1 for the Cardinals in the playoffs. What it shows me, though, is they need a number 2. They need someone that if your stopper doesn't end up doing his job or goes through a rut like he is in right now, you need somebody that can kind of fill his shoes. It's the reason the Cardinals have basically said, hey, this is why we're taking this approach with Sonny Gray. We cannot lose Sonny Gray. because we don't have a number 2, which to an extent, I understand that. And I also think you're seeing that when he's on the field, when he goes through these struggles, you need somebody there that is there to support him. When Zach Wheeler goes through a rough stretch, you know who they've got to back him up? They've got Aaron Nola. If Tyler Glasnow went through a rough stretch, the Dodgers had Yamamoto. Now they've got Kershaw that's back. You've got to get somebody that can be right up there to back him up as a number 2. For when he struggles, the rotation as a whole doesn't really feel that massive of a trickle-down effect.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard. I mean, I understand the track record of Sonny Gray. It's just hard for me to say I trust it right now because, I mean, we're talking 5 starts to where he's either not giving you 5 innings or he's going to put your team down so far behind. Like, we're not seeing the Sonny Gray. We haven't seen the Sonny Gray since late June of 6 or 7 innings, only giving up one earned run and giving your team a chance to win, much like that game on Friday against the Nationals. I mean, you were talking about being out of it in the first 3 innings because there were 3 runs given up. And for the Cardinals, like that's a insurmountable amount that you can come back from because of this offense being so inconsistent. So I trust he can figure it out because he went through this little weird spell a couple of months ago and he got back right, and that was those 5 starts. But it's to the point now where I feel like with him, same way I feel like with Miles Michaelis, to the point of I don't know what to expect when he steps on the mound. But you're right, T-Bone, because when one guy struggles, the hope is you have Robin to your Batman to step on the mound and say, I've got this. And in years prior, it's felt like that was Miles Michaelis to Jack Flaherty, where you were hoping for the ace and you didn't get there. Michaelis came through and looked like your best starting pitcher. Waino did that a couple of years ago. You don't have that guy. But that goes back to our previous segment of the payroll saying, I don't know if you can acquire that guy with what's out there on top of fixing your bullpen. Because if Sonny Gray struggles or if your rotation struggles, well, then you lean on the one area that you have been elite this season, and it's been shutting down games from the 6th inning on. And now we've seen Giovanni Gallegos, who has not really been a part of this bullpen all season, but he's been DFA'd, opens up a roster spot, you would imagine.
And a 40-man spot, important as well.
Very true for this trade deadline. But you've got Ryan Helsley. You got to get to the 9th inning, though. I mean, Andrew Kittredge has looked a little bit better, but it's just so inconsistent. JoJo Romero has struggled. I mean, you saw it over the weekend where they were going to I almost called him Mark Rycroft again. It's like this Mark Roycroft is stuck in my head. Chris Rycroft on the mound. I'm just
Learn
sorry.
Chris Roycroft's name.
It's not even the same thing. I don't know why I keep doing it. Chris Roycroft steps on the mound in the 6th inning for you. That game gets out of hand. You've seen John King take that role. Matthew Liberatore has just kind of been a shadow of himself since this role is evaporated into we don't know what. As much as we're talking about the rotation, you're also at the point where it is a necessity to go out there and find another arm. It doesn't have to be a high leverage because we know what those cost. It's a necessity to find somebody who can take relief off of Romero, Kittredge, and Helsley.
Yeah, you're really looking for, if you want to call him setup man, I'm okay with that, I guess. More of just that middle reliever that can really bridge, that you trust, a veteran that you're looking for. Because I think Ollie made reference to this over the weekend of the lack of experience now in their bullpen since they DFA'd Giovanni Gallegos. And you think about it, you've got Matthew Liberatore, who's still a young pitcher in terms of Major League Baseball experience, and especially as a bullpen arm. Ryan Fernandez, it's his first year in the big league. Kyle Leahy, really year 1, I would say, of being a big leaguer. Same with Chris Roycroft. Like, they've got a very young pen outside of JoJo Romero, and he's even young in that aspect. Really, the 2 veterans in their bullpen are Ryan Helsley and Andrew Kittredge. Yeah. They need another arm, and one with some veteran experience that you would trust to pitch in October that can take that 6th inning role. Because in a 2-0 game, if you want to go to a high leverage arm, say you're down 2 like they were against the Nationals over the weekend, I just don't feel comfortable with Chris Roycroft throwing in the 6th inning. I like what Roycroft's stuff looks like. I think he's a guy that next year we're probably talking about as, okay, can he take that next step? Yeah. This year, though, I think you're at the point, and you've seen it, he's got decent stuff. He's just not as effective as you'd like to be. You need somebody that can slot into that 6th inning role. Whether he's a righty or lefty, I don't really care. He probably needs to be a guy that doesn't have splits, since they can't probably realistically with their payroll get both a righty and a lefty. They need someone for that spot. And then you saw it again when they were down. I think for some reason they went to John King. I guess it was, I think, a lane on Sunday. You go to John King in the 7th inning to bridge you to Andrew Kittredge. Okay, I don't feel comfortable with that. Right. I don't necessarily like John King in the 7th inning. I like what John King brings. I'd bring him in a double play situation where I desperately need that. Take the old TJ McFarland role or the old Matt Bowman role. but I don't want John King pitching the 7th inning in a very close game. It just shows that they need one arm to be brought in to help them in that middle relief, to help them bridge to those setup guys into the closer.
You've always said it. You need 4 guys in your bullpen, 4 big-time guys, and you've got 2 of them. You hope Romero can re-find his stuff that he had in the first portion of the season, and it's that other piece for this team. And especially if your rotation's not going to be elite, you've got to be elite in an area, and I don't believe the offense is going to get there for you. So you look at the bullpen and say, how can we reclaim what we had that got us to this point since Mother's Day? And it all comes back to that bullpen help, and we've already seen some of those guys get traded around, and we'll update you on those trades around baseball at 12:30 once we get to our MLB trade deadline roundup. Katie Woo's going to join us at 12 o'clock. We've got questions and answers coming up at 11:45, but coming up next, we'll get into some NFL quick hitters, including 2 quarterbacks that got paid over the weekend. One I'm fine with, the other, God, I don't think that's going to look good. So we'll discuss that next on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Tough weekend for the Cardinals. They lost 10-8 on Friday, 14-3 on Saturday, but they picked up a win yesterday, a 4-3 winner, a walk-off from Paul Goldschmidt as they dropped 2 of 3 to the Nationals. They'll continue this homestand tonight as they'll welcome in the Texas Rangers for a 3-game set. It'll be Andre Palante going up against Nathan Eovaldi, a 6:45 first pitch from Busch Stadium. I'm Grant Francis. The Sports Center update's been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Let's get into some NFL quick hitters along with Tanner Hendrickson and Graham Francis. I'm Alex Ferrario. We'll get to questions and answers on the other side. Katie Wu joins us at 12 o'clock today to get an update on the Cardinals, our Cardinals insider for The Athletic. And guys, let's start with the 2 quarterbacks that got the money over the weekend, and now we have 2 new highest paid quarterbacks in the National Football League. First, it was, I think, Tua signed first. That signed the $212 million deal, 4 years, $53 million AAV extension. It's $167 million guaranteed for Tua. That man got paid. And then Jordan Love, a couple of hours later, got 4 years, $55 million AAV, $220 million with the Green Bay Packers. So let's start with Jordan Love. I don't like it because it's 1 year, and I know BK had to have celebrated that today on the opening drive, right? Like, he had to have been celebrating that Jordan Love got the money. Got to be his favorite quarterback in NFL.
More than Mahomes.
Yeah, more than Mahomes, absolutely. I don't like it because he did 1 year, but that's the situation he was put in, and I understand Green Bay. You were going to pay that money for Dak if he hits the free agent market. You're not going to go draft another one. I get it. Miami was the one that when I saw it, I'm like, this was a terrible decision. I mean, you paid $53 million for Tua, who has been an okay quarterback. He's been good for like a half of a season, and then the second half it typically falls away, and that's with 2 of the best receivers in the game, with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. You paid that guy that money that almost guarantees he has to be the best player on your roster every single game. And I don't buy that happening. That money could have gone to, although I don't like him either, Dak Prescott in the offseason. I mean, Miami's in a situation where it felt like they probably should have just found a way to go back to the draft and find another quarterback. But instead, you throw $53 million a year to Tua for 4 years, and now he has to play at an MVP level for Miami to be any good, and I don't see that happening.
Yeah, the Jordan Love one is the one that I go, okay, that's a lot of money, but I can understand how they were at that
least
risk.
He showcased ability to look like an MVP.
You saw the right steps for Jordan Love last year. Now, will he be a top 10 quarterback? I don't know. I know BK thinks is that already. If not, he will be that. Yeah. I'm a little skeptical, but hey, they were at a point where, hey, you got to get the deal done. And then for Tua, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, hey, man, you either got to pay this or you got to go back into potential quarterback hell. Go back to quarterback purgatory where you don't know what you're going to get. To me, the Tua deal signaled, okay, we need to find the NFL executives need to find that mid-tier market for starting quarterbacks. Because I'm kind of with you. I don't know if I like this deal for the Miami Dolphins with Tua, because I understand you've got to do it, but Tua is a guy that 2 years ago, you think about it, there's a lot of questions what his future in the NFL would be because of the concussion problems that he had.
Yeah.
And then you watch the production that he provides on the field, and I go, okay, he's like the 15th best quarterback. He's like in that range, top 15, maybe. He doesn't end up, to me, living up to the guy that is a franchise-deserving quarterback that gets that kind of deal. But again, if you're the Dolphins, stay the NFL, it's just what you got to do. You got to pay the quarterback and give him the money that he wants.
I know I'm in the minority because a lot of people believe Dak Prescott is better than what he is, and I think Dak's awesome in the regular season. It's the postseason that I have a problem with, and if you pay a guy that money, I need him to perform in the postseason. But, I would have much rather given this money to Dak Prescott if he becomes a free agent, and I think this is the situation that Dallas is going to be in. There's nothing else out there for you. You can't take a downgrade in terms of what some of these free agent quarterbacks are going to look like, and you're not going to get anything in the draft worth substance. So this is the route you have to go. I get it with Tua, but if you just look at his numbers, he's good. I don't think he's $53 million good.
Well, and the numbers to me are deceiving because, like, we got a text from the 314. Tua led the entire NFL in passing yards. Love him or hate him, you got to pay your quarterback. Otherwise, you have fun with Sam Darnold. Yeah, that's the spot you're in. But again, like, those numbers are deceiving because we all watched the Miami Dolphins games last year when they were on television. You go, okay, well, who are the best players on the Dolphins? Tua's not top 3. Like, you would have said Jalen Waddle, you would have said Tyreek Hill, and you would have priced a couple of their defensive players before you got to Tua.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, for the Dolphins, it's working. Like, if Tua is healthy, it's working.
How much have you won in October?
That's not
October. Sorry, I'm thinking baseball. How much have you won in October?
They won about as much as the Cardinals have won in October.
But is that due to the offense? I would argue that it's more defensively that they've struggled, not offensively.
I mean, that game and look, it was an very odd situation where they're playing like negative 30s in Kansas City.
You can't really put too much emphasis on that game.
Like, if I'm the Miami Dolphins, a lot of the stadiums you're going to play in when you get to the playoffs, think about it, there are a lot of the outdoor cold stadiums, and the way their offense is set up, do you trust Tua to go out there and win in the cold? My answer would be no. I just don't trust Tua. Like, if you said, can Tua get the Dolphins over the hump and get them on a deep playoff run? My answer would be no.
Let's play this game real quick. Same quarterback, or same offense, same team, different quarterback. Would you rather have Tua or Jared Goff?
I would take Goff, but I think it's close.
I would agree. I'd probably take Goff.
Justin Herbert or Tua?
Herbert.
Lamar Jackson or Tua?
Lamar.
Jalen Hurts or Tua?
Jalen Hurts.
Kyler Murray or Tua?
I'd take Tua in that situation.
That one's probably a tie for me.
Kirk Cousins or Tua?
I'd probably go in that offense.
I'd go Tua.
Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Matt Stafford.
All three of those guys over Tua.
Those are guys that he has to play better than if you're going in terms of salary, because all of those players I just listed make less than Tua. And that's the problem for me, is you're paying this guy to play like that on a team that has that offense, to where if you put any of those other quarterbacks on it, I think we're talking about a Super Bowl contender.
But like I said, it's working. Like, at least in the regular season, it's working.
But do you view Miami as a Super Bowl contender?
It depends on their route. It depends on the route
because that's the
that
real
they
question.
have in the playoffs. If they're going to play negative 30 temperatures, then no.
Sure, but then I just paid a guy $55 million.
To not play in the cold.
Yeah, I just paid gave a guy a huge contract. And again, like, I understand the Dolphins had to do this. Like, there is no, like, oh, well, what were their options? Well, they could go get Dak maybe in the offseason. No, like, they had to pay Tua. But what I'm saying is the reason that you have to pay him is because the NFL hasn't established that middle tier for quarterbacks, which they need to, because Tua is not worth the contract he just got. Because what you're saying is, well, are the Dolphins contenders? Well, to get the right path. So I just paid a guy $55 million a year, gave him a huge $200 million contract extension just for luck for us to hopefully get to the Super Bowl. I pay $5 for a lottery ticket. That seems more reasonable to pay for luck.
So since we're talking about quarterbacks, then we think Miami's got a problem. Let's look over at Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Dan Graziano on the Steelers quarterback situation. It's a lot more of a coin flip than most think, and I believe that part of the reason the Steelers have set Wilson up as the leader in the competition is because they believe that's the best way to manage him. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Fields will show enough through camp to catch him and claim the Week 1 starting spot. What are we doing?
Wilson right now not practicing because of a calf injury.
This is much better than the 3 quarterback situation that they had last year in Pittsburgh. So, look, I know Russell Wilson's bad, but it's an upgrade over what they used as a quarterback last year. But, we're putting Russell Wilson as the number 1 on our depth chart because that's the best way to manage him, and Justin Fields will overtake that spot. This sounds like a locker room drama waiting to happen this upcoming season for Pittsburgh. And, you've got the right head coach to deal with it, and Mike Tomlin, probably better than most around the NFL. I still don't like the vibes around Pittsburgh, even if Russell Wilson's the leader in the clubhouse.
Yeah, Pittsburgh Steelers, their quarterback situation is fascinating because I don't know what Justin Fields is, and yet they still have him, down in the pecking order. I almost want to see Fields get the start there because I know what Russell Wilson is. He's a top 20 quarterback at this point, maybe 20.
I was going to say, I don't even know.
And he may not even be that at this point in his career. I want to know what Justin Fields is. Yeah. And now that he's getting the lead reps because Wilson is out due to an injury, I wonder if you're going to see him kind of Wally Pipp Russell Wilson. And I almost hope you kind of do, because I still think there's some left in Justin Fields that we don't know. And that's why we talked about it in the offseason of hey, what are the Bears gonna get for Justin Fields? And they got like nothing for him. I still think there's more in the tank. I am almost rooting for him to take the job from Russell Wilson because I do think he can be at least at minimum a better quarterback than him. But I also think there's still a ceiling for him, and especially under a head coach that I trust in Mike Tomlin.
I agree with you. I would rather see Justin Fields in that situation, but either way, no matter who they end up starting week 1, I still think Pittsburgh's a playoff team. And it's honestly, it's only
so
because
tough,
it's tough, but it was tough last year too. Yeah. And they had Mason Rudolph at quarterback.
I just don't know how they get into the playoffs. I mean, Buffalo, we just talked about Miami being a playoff team.
It'll come down to the final wild card, probably.
The Jets, the Ravens. I don't know about the Browns. Texans, Chiefs.
I think it comes down to them, the Jets, and the Chargers.
Yeah, it's going to come down to one of those last couple of spots. I'm with you. And Mike Tomlin always finds a way to stay at or above 500, so that's their path to getting into the postseason. Graham Francis, Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Alex Ferrario. Katie Wu joining us at 12 o'clock. Don't forget, we're still going to get to your mic drops at 12:15 on the Cardinals comment from John Denton, a source that told him the Cardinals front office has been told by ownership that if they're bringing in money beyond this year, then money has to go from their roster. Your thoughts on that payroll challenge at the Cardinals are in. You can send us the mic drops on 101 ESPN app. You can also text us. Air Comfort Service text line 314-399-9646. Questions and answers next on 101 ESPN.
You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's Questions and Answers.
Presented by Window World St. Louis.com. Simply the best for less.
314-399-9646 is our Air Comfort Service text line. We are live up on our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. Our studio cams brought to you by the Air Alliance team and the Graveyard T-Bone. They are ready for today.
Fired up.
They started
today?
on a Monday, and they were ready to go. Get on into the graveyard today with us up on our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. And again, keep sending your mic drops. We'll get to those after Katie Wu, who's going to join us at 12 o'clock. But now we get to some questions and answers on our Air Comfort Service text line. We'll start with this one, T-Bone, from the 314. Guys, do you think Sonny Gray's recent struggles are a byproduct of taking less money this year with the promise of adding at the deadline? Oh, so the Nolan Arenado symptoms.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I think for whatever reason, something's gone awry, whether it be delivery, pitch grip in terms of the way he's releasing the baseball.
Because the velocity is all pretty much the same.
Yeah. Whatever it is it's something with just his off-speed stuff, or he's, trying to, what would be the word? Trying to work, just focus on command to where he's not just pitching, and he loses some of that effect because he's always said, like, hey, if I just throw it down the middle, my stuff's good enough. Yeah. And when he struggled last time, he was trying to be too precise. I don't think it's anything to deal with his contract and anything to deal with what the Cardinals are doing at the trade deadline, because all those guys really care about is, okay, are we going to get reinforcements? Yeah. It doesn't really play into how they play on the field.
Look, the trade deadline, I mean, it always looms. Like, whether you know you're secure or you're not secure, it always looms because you got best friends on the team. You don't know what's going to happen to them if they get moved, if they don't get moved. So that plays a factor into this, no matter the sport. I know we just think of them as robots, but you also have to think about it as humans a little bit, which I know people don't like to hear. And I know this isn't the case in his last start because the offense scored 5 runs after he gave up, 3 or 4 in the first 3 innings. But you know how in hockey we always talk about like a team plays to the point where they don't want to make mistakes and you make more mistakes? I do wonder if a little of this on Sonny Gray is I have to be perfect because if I'm not perfect, I don't know if this offense can back me up. Like a goaltender, I have to be perfect, and that first tough one gets past him, and it's like, crap, here we go again.
Yeah, and there might be a little bit of that to it because, I saw a text earlier in the show, I think it was when we were talking about Gray struggles at 11:15 of, this team should be an offense identity team. It shouldn't be the pitching is what's driving if they're winning or losing. No, they're at the point now where they can't rely on the offense. Like their offense, they hope scores 3 runs. Their identity is going to be pitching and defense. That's how they're going to win in October, and it's why we've talked about adding a bullpen arm, adding a starter, and if you add a right-handed bat, that helps against left-handed pitching. Their offense, the only way that it's going to take a significant step forward is if Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado suddenly become the guys we saw in 2022.
Yeah, it's internal. Internal is how you're fixing this offense. 314-399-9646. We're getting a couple of these, but I'll read this one from the 618. Guys, seeing the returns that teams have gotten on relievers, would you entertain the idea of trading Ryan Helsley? Doesn't make us better for this year, but if the Cardinals aren't spending money anyway, might as well get some return. We're going to get into this more in the 1 o'clock hour because Grant Francis was kind of on the opposite side of where T-Bone and I, and then Derek Gould had a report earlier today, which I find very interesting. So deep tease for you there in the 1 o'clock hour. You can't trade Ryan Helsley out of one side of your mouth and then say out of the other, we're trying to be a playoff team. Because if you lose Ryan Helsley, you lose the only weapon that has been winning you baseball games. Without Ryan Helsley, I truly believe this team is probably in the same situation that they were in last year in terms of standings, losses that they have on their record. Helsley has been the savior for this team just as much as Sonny Gray, Alec Burleson has been. But with that being said, I think you do have to have an honest moment and look at what post-All-Star break has looked like, look at some of the trends of your team, the holes, and what the prices are going for a closer. This would be the best trade chip that you have had since I don't know when. Like I know Jordan Hicks, we talked about this off air earlier in our show prep meeting, T-Bone, but Jordan Hicks wasn't this.
Yeah.
Like Jordan Hicks wasn't one of the best closers in Major League Baseball. Yeah. We're talking Helsley as one of the best closers in Major League Baseball.
If not the best.
Yeah. We're talking like, what's his face? Aroldis Chapman when he was traded from the Yankees to the Cubs in 2016. That good.
Yeah, I I don't believe you trade Ryan Helsley. I think, though, yes, you would get a haul for him because we've seen the market for relievers and the price that is being paid is exorbitant. I think you look at Ryan Helsley and to your point, like, hey, man, he's a big reason why you're winning baseball games because you're playing in so many one-run games. I typically devalue the closer spot, but I can't deny it with Ryan Helsley because of the amount of one-run games that the Cardinals play. Now, if they didn't have him, would they be as bad as last year? I don't necessarily agree with that. They would be worse without him. They probably would be a below 500 team without him, but I don't think you move on from him. And, like, if you trade Ryan Helsley, what are you getting in return? You're probably not getting any big league help. You're more likely getting prospects. And how much does that really help you in the long run? To me, you're still trying to make the playoffs for this year, even though ownership's kind of hamstringing that effort. I do think you're still trying to make the playoffs. You're still trying to upgrade, and trading Ryan Helsley doesn't get you major league ready pieces.
I think it's something that you have to consider, but I don't think at the end of the day it's the best decision because if you're going that route, I think that's similar to if the Blues were to trade Jordan Bennington. Like, the wheels are just going to fly off at that moment. So I don't necessarily think they should be complete buyers and go all in because they don't have the team to do that. But I don't think that they should just tear it down to the stubs and trade Ryan Helsley and just be terrible because they are able to get some value for the younger players if they can be competitive all the way to the end of the season and maybe squeak into the playoffs. But at the same time, like, you can't be all out buyers with as many holes as this team has. Like, it's just not realistic. If anything, like, the ceiling for this team is making the playoffs and then probably getting swept in the wild card round.
Yeah.
Whoa, we could win a wild card series.
No, we
maybe
can't.
A game.
No,
okay, maybe you squeak out a game.
Get the hell out of here.
A best of three? Come on.
Yeah,
I saw the White Sox win 2 or 3 against the Cardinals.
Each game that you win in the playoffs is because of one of the holes that you have on your roster.
No.
Bullpen comes through, offense comes through, starting pitching comes through. I tell you what, let's ask Katie Wu this of the Athletic Cardinals insider, who I'm sure is just getting tons of phone calls as we approach trade deadline on Tuesday, but she's kind enough to join us next here on 101 ESPN. Hendrickson and Graham Francis. I'm Alex Ferrario. It is BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. No BK today. He had to fill in on the morning show. He will be back with us tomorrow and the rest of the week. So you get the A-team. You get T-Bone, Alex, and Graham Francis, which also means we get our exclusive interview with Katie J. Wu of The Athletic, our Cardinals insider. That means BK doesn't get to do the interview, which, Katie, I'd say is a perfect week to start off the Monday. How are you?
Hey, you know what? At least one of us here is committed to this show, so could not say the same about BK, but I'm here, guys. What do you got?
That is commitment right there by Katie Wu. And Katie, we are glad to have you because there is a lot going on. I thought we were going to be coming to the show today on a Monday to just talk about a series loss to the Washington Nationals and what this means for the trade deadline. And then between you and John Denton putting it out there that the Cardinals are basically stating that, look, if there's going to be money coming in for future years in contract, there has to be money going out. And in your piece, you referenced Tommy Edman being available on the trade block, which sounds like there are some teams interested in. So give us, Katie, the state of this Cardinals team as we approach Tuesday's deadline.
Yeah, I mean, okay, let's talk about it because there's a lot of revolving pieces here. I expect the next, 30 hours or so, I'm not that great at math, to be very hectic for the Cardinals. And this is typical to how they operate at the deadline. I know we are a year removed from them being buyers, but the Cardinals, when you think about 21, 22, most of their deals did not come until the day of the deadline, if not at the deadline. So a lot of things changing. There is interest in Tommy Edman. Two powerhouses in the Los Angeles Dodgers and New York Yankees have expressed clear interest in him. The Cardinals do expect to trade Giovanni Gallegos before the deadline. DFAing him just kind of expedited that process. But they would like to move Dylan Carlson if they can. And, of course, payroll does factor into all of these decisions. But, you guys, this, if you pay attention to the Cardinals, shouldn't really come, unfortunately, as much of a surprise as it might because ownership has always operated so conservatively here. What's disappointing, I think, is – based on last season and expectations being so spoiled from that, coming into this year and hearing, okay, they're not adding on any payroll, it's disappointing for fans to hear because there is an expectation in St. Louis to win. But it's not any different from how the Cardinals have operated at the deadline before. Mo has kind of always been under pretty strict parameters. We're seeing the same thing now.
And, Katie, with those strict parameters, do you think that they are still trying to fill their three needs, a bullpen arm, a starter, and a right-handed bat? Or because of these parameters, you think they're going to have to cut one of those out?
I mean, when we talked about these three areas being needed improvements on the roster, we did say it's going to be difficult to get all three. That's why I think that exploring Tommy Edman potentially being traded is interesting because you do clear up the $8 million that he is owed for 2025. So that's a big chunk of money when you're operating, again, under really strict reins from ownership. I do think there is a way. The Cardinals are creative. Mo is not immune from criticism here, but he is very good at getting crafty at the deadline and netting needs that somehow fit under the very, again, tight parameters he's operating under. I do think there's a way to do it. It just means they have to get creative with who they're willing to part with. That's how Tommy Edman became on the block in the first place. That's what made him expendable. Do the Cardinals like Tommy? Absolutely. Do we know what kind of value he brings to a ball club? Yes, we've seen it for years. Did they fully intend to have him start in center field to start the season? They did. But Michael Ciani's emergence as, in my opinion, a Gold Glove center fielder, Brendan Donovan showing he can be an everyday left fielder plus serving as a super utility, Alec Burleson coming in and cementing his spot on the field because simply the fact that he can hit, that has made Tommy's value no longer dire to this team. They've shown already they can win without him. And I think when you're looking at what Tommy is owed next year and how much contending teams covet him, because, again, the reason teams like him is the same reason the Cardinals do, his versatility, it makes sense to try to explore if you can move that contract off your books for the remainder of this year and all of next year.
So, Katie, how much are the future years playing in this? How much does next year factor into what they're deciding to do? Are they going to have payroll ramifications for next year that based on what you're hearing?
So this is where it gets complicated, right? Because one look at Busch Stadium this year will tell you Gate revenue is down dramatically. I think the Cardinals have had 3 sellouts this year, 1 opening day, and then two separate games against the Cubs at home. That is dramatically low. And then when you take your look at it, your typical Monday, Tuesday night game, that stadium's half empty. So gate revenue is down. The bigger concern, I think, for ownership right now is that Bally Sports and their financial situation is up in the air. And if there's anything as important as gate revenue to the Cardinals, it's revenue sharing that they get from their TV rights deal. The Cardinals, as we know, are one of the teams that profit the most in terms of what they get from their TV revenue sharing. And with Bally being up in the air, it's really hard for ownership to understand what that payroll looks like. Am I excusing this kind of decision? No, not really. Is it disappointing? Yes, definitely. If I'm a fan, I'm disappointed to hear this. I'm frustrated to hear this. Is it surprising? No, not really.
We're talking with Katie Wu of The Athletic, our Cardinals insider, who is with us now here on 101 ESPN. And Katie, you get a perfect pulse of that clubhouse from start to finish. And we've heard in past years, Nolan Arenado being vocally frustrated when the Cardinals didn't make upgrades at the trade deadline. I know Sonny Gray is a competitor, and that was part of the reason why he didn't take as much in this first year. What do you think that clubhouse is going to feel like if the Cardinals aren't able to make enough improvements to fill some of these holes?
What they'll tell you publicly, because this is a clubhouse full of professionals, and I do think that they mean this because guys that have been here and done this a long time, like Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, Sonny Gray, Paul Goldschmidt, etc., do have to have this kind of mentality if they want to be successful in the second half of the season. They're going to say, we like the makeup of this clubhouse. We've won all year. We can continue to do so. But there will be some disappointment and frustration in that clubhouse if the Cardinals don't add. And the good news is I firmly expect them to add. I expect the next day and a half to be very busy. You're going to hear a lot of rumors. Those aren't coming out of nowhere. John Mozeliak and Mike Gersh and the whole front office are actively involved in trying to improve this team. The definition here, or the difference in definition, is that they're not going to be the blockbuster buyers. They never have been. We know this. But that doesn't mean that they're not trying to improve the team. I do think the Cardinals will make, significant moves to make the roster better. It's just the degree of how much better it could get that differs probably from reasonable expectations to fan expectations based on what we know about ownership and payroll.
So, Katie, the name that you were reporting on over the weekend of the rumors with the Yankees was Nestor Cortez. And since you're talking about finding ways to make improvements, how much of improvement is that if the Cardinals do acquire Cortez?
So what I like about Cortez, and I think what the Cardinals do, if they do indeed pursue him, he is a name that is available. The Yankees have put him out there, is his durability. It's the key word for the rotation. He's made 22 starts for the Yankees. He's logged the most innings out of that rotation. He has experience. This is less important in the grand scheme of things. He's also left-handed. The Cardinals don't have a lefty in their rotation, so it's nice to switch it up a little bit. What makes him, I think, desirable from a financial standpoint, he has 1 year left of arbitration coming into 2025. He is due to make in total this year $3.95 million. So you contrast that with what he's arguably expected to make. Again, I'm no math girl, but you can say reasonably around $6 or $7 million, depending how the rest of the season goes. You're gaining money back if you do indeed trade Tommy Edman and what he's due to make in 2025. And you think about the history with these clubs before. In 2022, the Cardinals and Yankees swung a buzzer beater at the deadline, traded Harrison Bader for Jordan Montgomery. And to me, this trade is almost a carbon copy of that one because of the guys that they're trading, a homegrown Cardinal, same years of control remaining, not guys that are really going to break the bank and valued for what both teams need. I'm not sure if Nestor Cortez fits in the Yankees pitching playoff picture, just like the Yankees weren't sure if Jordan Montgomery did at the time. To me, that's a deal that makes sense. It's a deal that can be done, but there are a lot of moving parts, as we know at this time, guys. So just something to monitor. Definitely not definitive, but something to keep in mind.
And Katie, if they bring in, whether it be Cortez or another starting pitcher, who's the pitcher that comes out of the rotation? Is it just strictly Andre Palante because it's easy for them to manipulate the roster because of his options?
Yeah, probably. And this is no knock on Palante, who I think has actually been the most effective reliever starter over the last 6 weeks. I think he's done a really nice job, but experience matters, right? Depth matters. And the Cardinals don't have depth right now. So by moving Palante out of the rotation, if they get to that point, all you're doing is ensuring that he is able to be in a spot where he can be called up if something happens. We all know injuries happen all the time, and fill in that need before. He's shown he can be a reliable starter, but you're only as good as your depth. You're not sure what you're getting with Steven Matz, who is set out to start a rehab assignment again on Thursday in Durham with Memphis. But at this point, it's fair to say, and Mo has said it as well, it's unfair to really kind of expect anything from Matz at this point because you just don't know. And that's no knock on him. It's the knock on the injury. Backs are tricky, especially for pitchers. So making sure you have depth is just as important here as acquiring a pitcher that can fit into the rotation. I think Palante would be really suited well as the sixth starter because he's shown he can handle getting called up and contributing whenever they need him.
Katie, what's their plan with Steven Matz? Are they still planning to stretch him out as a starter, or do they want him to come back as a bullpen arm?
That's a good question. I think they're set on lefty bullpen arms. I mean, you're looking at Romero, Libby, John King. We've seen him be a lot more effective as of late. I think it depends on Matz's rehab in general. You know, again, depth matters here, so you do need some sort of rotation help, maybe from the left side. But I think it just kind of depends on what their need is around the end of August, which is potentially when you could see Matz return just based on the normal rehab timelines. I think it's too early to tell on what that role for Matz will be. It will solely depend on what the need for the team is at that point.
Couple more questions for Katie Wu, our Cardinals insider, covers the team for The Athletic here on BK and Ferrario. Katie, I think you're going to be on the same page as T-Bone and I, but we've already gotten a lot of text from people about this Cardinals team looking at the state of where they're at and understanding what the returns have been for bullpen help. If you're John Mozeliak, do you consider moving Ryan Helsley?
No, because who's closing your games now? Look, I understand. We did a piece at The Athletic yesterday that the relief market is absurdly high. Costs have skyrocketed. So I understand where this logic and argument is coming from. But the Cardinals have pledged that they want to compete this year. If you trade Ryan Helsley, who's your closer at this point? Now, this doesn't mean they can't maybe look at those options going into the offseason where his value is a little bit lower, but selling or trading Helsley right now does not make your team better. It makes your team worse for this season. And the front office, whether you agree with it or not, the Cardinals are only a game out of the playoff picture, have pledged to make the team better at the deadline. Trading Helsley does not do that.
Katie, final one for you, and I know it's kind of looking ahead right now, but it's the last time we talked to you before the trade deadline. Do you believe we will be surprised at what the Cardinals are trading away after the deadline and the dust settles?
Yes, because we're always surprised at what the Cardinals do. That's why, you know, when we first hear names connected to the Cardinals floated out 2 or 3 weeks ahead of the deadline, I'm always skeptical because this is a team that, and this is a compliment to them, they certainly make my job harder, are very much under wraps. You rarely hear leaks that early coming from the Cardinals. Right about now, when all the teams are talking, I think things are more substantial. They have a little bit more base to it. But I'm always a little cautious of names that I hear connected to the Cardinals in the beginning, and it's a lot of the time why I don't really follow up there because it's very unlike them. So, yes, I expect people to be surprised. I expect myself to be surprised. It's how they operate. It's a testament to the secrecy of their front office and how well put together they are. I do think we have some sort of general idea of what they're doing and who they're targeting just based on the reporting. But I do think there will be a surprise at some point.
Never surprised, but you're always going to be busy, Katie. Katie J. Wu of The Athletic. Make sure you follow her on Twitter. Make sure you keep up with her work on The Athletic. She's got the inside scoop for the Cardinals leading up to Tuesday's deadline. Katie, always appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Good luck the rest of this week, and you'll get to take a breath on Wednesday.
You got it, guys. I'll see you soon.
There you go. Katie Wu with us every Monday here on BK and Ferrario. I think there's a lot to react to specifically on that payroll conversation, T-Bone. So let's react on the other side. And we're going to get your thoughts from John Denton and Katie Wu's piece talking about the financial flexibility of the Cardinals to where money's coming in, money's going out. So we'll get to your mic drops. We'll react to Katie's thoughts coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
look at Busch Stadium this year will tell you gate revenue is down dramatically. I think the Cardinals have had 3 sellouts this year, 1 opening day, and then two separate games against the Cubs at home. That is dramatically low. And then when you take your look at it, your typical Monday, Tuesday night game, that stadium's half empty. So gate revenue is down. The bigger concern, I think, for ownership right now is that Bally Sports and their financial situation is up in the air. And if there's anything as important as gate revenue to the Cardinals, it's revenue sharing that they get from their TV rights deal. The Cardinals, as we know, are one of the teams that profit the most in terms of what they get from their TV revenue sharing. And with Bally being up in the air, it's really hard for ownership to understand what that payroll looks like.
So that was Katie Wu of The Athletic, our Cardinals insider. If you just missed our interview with her, you can check it out after the show or later on today up on our podcast page, 101ESPN.com. As always, presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. With Tanner Hendrickson and Graham Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario. And Katie said there what it's kind of a peek behind the curtain of why John Denton and Katie both referenced the financial flexibility of where the Cardinals are at and how it feels like if there's money coming in, there needs to be money going out. And I know a lot of people listening aren't going to like that, T-Bone, but that is the state of the business. And I think if you were to slice this pie, I would say about 95% of this pie is this Bally Sports TV deal. The problem is that's not going anywhere. Like, they are at a stalemate right now, at least from Evan Drelich's point of view, who's been reporting on this stuff. It doesn't seem like any side is budging, and it seems like the courts just keep delaying this. So this is, you set this aside and look at it and say, well, I'm not sure where this is going to end up right now. But it does impact the Cardinals' day-to-day lives. And the seats not being filled throughout the season. What'd she say, 2 sellouts this season? People aren't going to like to hear that because at least it's such a sticky situation that the Cardinals are in because, yes, they can complain about gate revenue and how if you're not coming to the games, then we can't spend money. But that side of the argument could also go to the fans that say, well, I'm not going to spend money if you're not going to invest in an exciting team. So it's really a tough spot that this Cardinals team is in right now. But the hard part is where they're at this trade deadline. If that's where they're at now financially, and that's how they view these next couple of years, seat revenue is not going up. Seat revenue is just going to kind of remain where it is because of the state of this Cardinals team. So it's a really tough spot to be in, but I do think it paints the picture of this Cardinals front office mindset. And you can't get mad at John Mozeliak because John Mozeliak has a boss, just like all of us have a boss. And if a boss tells you, you got to cut payroll, you got to get rid of money certain places, well, guess what? They have to do it, and they have to get creative at how they're doing it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the ramifications of this play out because here at this year's trade deadline, look, Mo's job is a lot tougher now to try and figure out, okay, how am I going to upgrade the St. Louis Cardinals to make us a better team on the field to try and get us to October and fill our 3 needs while also being in the state of, okay, I basically need to break even when I make these trades.
Right.
You know, I basically, however much salary we bring in is how much salary we have to send out. I think where it gets interesting, and that's why I asked Katie about what does this mean for next year of, okay, so what are they projecting for payroll for the 2025 season then? Because your point, the Bally Sports situation, you know, the hope is that gets cleared up by the time you get to the offseason, but it's a big unknown right now because they are in a holdup right now, in a delay while Diamond tries to reorganize everything. And, you know, I don't think the fan aspect of it plays as much into it as the TV revenue one.
I think that's
because
all of it.
They get locked into their certain amount. You know, they get X amount of millions of dollars from that TV deal, and it could potentially just be gone with a snap of the fingers, potentially. I don't think that's going to be the case, but could potentially be the case by the end of next season. And that's when it gets a lot trickier for the Cardinals and how they're going to be upgrading the roster going into next season if they have certain payroll ramifications on them because of the way that things are falling in line right now. Here at the deadline, look, is it a lot tougher for Mo to do his job? Yeah. Do I think Mo can do it? Yes, I think he'll find a way to upgrade the St. Louis Cardinals. Where it gets really interesting is what this will mean for the 2025 season.
Well, and I think that's why they're talking about a Nestor Cortez, because that's a controllable asset beyond this year. I think you'd have him up until 2026 when he's a free agent, and then from there, you're talking about sending out pieces. Like, you don't like to admit it, but it is what they accomplished in 2022 when they acquired Jordan Montgomery. You got Montgomery by trading away Harrison Bader, bringing in money as you got rid of money, which is the creativity they're at right now. And from this texter, and we're going to get to your mic drops in just a moment, but from this texter from the 618, do you think someone would take Nolan Arenado off your hands if you need to make more room for your payroll? That's the other problem the Cardinals are in. And somebody also mentioned stop signing or stop overpaying for washed-up players. The Cardinals are in the market right now where, other than Sonny Gray, where you could get multi-years, Wilson Contreras, you get multi-years, they're in the spot where they have to do these one-year deals for Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn, because you know what guys don't want to do in free agency? Sign for 1 year and then reset the market. Sign for 1 year and then go back out there. And you can't trade away some of these salaries because some of these guys are getting paid, or you don't want to move on from these players. It would be great to move on from Nolan Arenado, but guess what? Nolan Arenado decides where he wants to go. And Nolan Arenado is going to want to go to one place. And guess what? That one place might not want him. You're trying to move on from Tommy Edman, from Giovanni Gallegos. I'm sure they'll talk about moving on from Brandon Crawford when they get to that point. But that's not saving you a lot of money. They won't discuss the Lance Lynn because you kind of need Lance Lynn if you can't acquire a piece on the market. They are in a tough spot, which I'm not giving them any leeway on. Like, you put yourself in this position and you still have to find a way to stay aggressive. Otherwise, the other side of your argument is going to continue to come back and bite you.
Yeah, Arenado is not a conversation this year because they're going to be holding on to him, and just in the fact that he's probably not worth what you would want to get in return for him this year, he becomes a potential question mark of what his future in St. Louis is if there are major payment payroll ramifications going into next season. Nolan Arenado, not so much a conversation this year, but he is next year, and that's where this is going to get interesting is, okay, again, this year is a little easier to try and figure out. Trying to figure out what their payroll is going to be going into the 2025 season, and we'll get to that when we get to the end of the season, and hopefully a late October run is where it will get a lot more interesting for the St. Louis Cardinals because of the state of their RSNs.
So let's get to some of these mic drops. We teased it earlier in the show. Your thoughts when you hear about the lack of payroll flexibility for the Cardinals and how it's money in, money out at this trade deadline. Let's start with Vic.
The Cardinals need to be sellers. I hate to say it. They don't have the TV money. They don't have enough trade chips. They don't, everybody agrees the Cardinals need to improve, but what are they going to improve on? They don't, even if they had no money situation, we don't have enough trade chips as it is to get these players. Nobody wants the players that the Cardinals could trade. So unfortunately, you got to do what's best for the future. And what's best for the future is trading Helsley and others and try again next year and see where they're at. But that's what they have, to do. Yes, it is about money, but it's also they're just not good enough. They have too many holes, and they don't have enough trade chips to fix the holes. So it's time to sell again, keep building up the farm system, and see what they can do for next year, and starting with Helsley. And see who else they could sell off after Helsley.
So I'm just not at the point where I could sit here and say sell, because if you sell, you're essentially saying we're not in this. And like, selling doesn't have to mean you're selling everybody off of your roster. But if you're selling, let's be frank about who you're selling. You're moving on from Ryan Helsley. And you move on from Ryan Helsley, like Katie just told us, you're not winning any more baseball games because he has been the sole proprietor of this of this team's ability to win baseball games. But I also feel like some of this is just kind of in the moment reaction, because let's say you took 2 of 3 against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Let's say you took 2 of 3, and I know you didn't. But is this more reactionary to the fact that you lost a series to the Pirates and lost a series to the Washington Nationals of, well, you need to go into sell mode right now? Because you lost a series to the Washington Nationals because your bullpen stinks. You lost a series to the Pittsburgh Pirates because you can't hit left-handed pitching. As much as I sit here and say it makes sense to go out there and sell because this team's not good, yeah, the team's average or above average if you want to go down that path, but you're 1 game out of a playoff spot. You don't have to be – being a buyer doesn't mean you're going out there and selling the farm to bring in one guy. You could be a buyer by selling Tommy Edman and bringing in a Nestor Cortez and making your rotation better.
That's the thing for me is and BK talked about this today on the opening drive, so credit to him because I heard him say it. People seem to think that there's basically 2 routes. You either sell which is what Vic was talking about there. They should sell Ryan Helsley. They don't have trade pieces. Or you end up just buying. And when people think of buying, they think of, the significant upgrades where you go out and you acquire a Garrett Crochet or you go out and you acquire a Tariq Skubal. The Cardinals aren't in that spot, and they're also not in the spot where they should sell. They are a good baseball team. They're not a great baseball team, but they're good. They're fine. They should be buyers. They should be marginally upgrading. And, I think people have misconstrued what it's going to cost. Like Mark DeRosa today on MLB Network saying the Cardinals should trade Jordan Walker for Erick Fedde.
What kind of fantasy GM is that dude playing?
That's a ridiculous trade scenario because you're not trading that much control over a potential superstar for a number 3 starter with another year of control at $7 million. It's not going to cost a ton for Fedde. Now, he is a hot commodity. It's going to cost maybe more than we're expecting. But going out and getting a Mark Canha, a right-handed bat, he's not going to cost you anything significant. You have the chips to trade for that. You could trade a AAA arm like a Gordon Graceffo to try and go get him and maybe package something around that. These rental-type arms, these rental bats, they're not going to cost as much as people think. I mean, look at Michael Lorenzen. He got dealt to the Royals today. They got him for a minor league reliever. It's not going to cost as much for the rental arms. When you get to guys that have control, it's going to be a little pricey. The Cardinals do have trade chips to go out and improve their ball club. Now, they don't have the chips, or they do have the chips, but they shouldn't spend the chips to go get a Crochet or a Skubal. They're not at that point in their life cycle as an organization.
Let's hear one more, and then we'll break and come back and get to some more mic drops. Let's hear from Janet.
My thoughts on Denton's comments about the payroll not being increased is exactly what I expected it to be. But only thing I can say on the Cardinals side is none of us can see their books and we don't know what's going on. So you sometimes just have to accept the situation and make the best of it.
I mean,
I like that mindset.
Janet's got a glass half full kind of day, and I appreciate that about Janet. But I mean, all of us we can't live in denial. Like, we're all watching the games. We've all been to games at Busch Stadium. There are not a lot of people in those seats. And again, this is such a tough argument because why pay the money to go to a game if you're not putting money into a team that can actually compete? So I understand that side of the argument. But if I'm running a business like that, I got to make sure that there's money coming in. And if there's not money coming in, then money has to go out. So, I mean, it is a tough spot to be in, and it all comes back to that TV deal situation for this Cardinals team. The tough part is you just have to be honest where you are. And you're not the Washington Nationals, although you got beat by them. You're not the Miami Marlins or the Colorado Rockies. You're 3 games above 500. And 3 games above 500, you're talking about 1 game difference between you and the New York Mets. This National League is bad. It's not just the Cardinals that are bad. The National League is bad. The Cardinals are just starting to fall back down to earth, which is why you need to try and make an improvement.
Yeah, when I say this, it's going to sound cold-hearted. I don't think that their payroll, whatever you want to call payroll issues, their more approach of take money in for take money out, has to do with attendance this year. It's all about the TV deal last year. Sure, the attendance being down hurts them a little bit. Only, what Katie said, 3 sellouts so far this year. That hurts them a little bit. It doesn't hurt them as bad as the revenue that they're going to get from their RSN if that disappears next year. And that's where all this comes from. All of their hesitation to add payroll for next year is because of the lack of the RSN, of knowing that they've got that certainty of that money coming in from Bally. Now, that's what makes it frustrating that they're not adding to the payroll for this year because they have received their payment from Bally Sports Midwest for this year. They should probably be adding some payroll, not a ton of payroll, but they should be able to add some to this year's roster because they have that money from their TV deal. Next year is the one where I understand a little bit from the side of the Cardinals of, hey, we don't know what we're making from our TV deals, so we have to be a little bit more cautious. To me, that makes sense from a business standpoint a little bit. I'm not trying to defend the Cardinals, but this year's where it seems inexcusable of, okay, you've already got that money. You've got a team that you say you want to show urgency in by getting back to the playoffs, trying to generate playoff revenue, and yet you're telling me you're not going to be adding payroll? That just doesn't make sense to me.
He's Tanner Hendrickson, Graham Francis. I'm Alex Ferrario. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll get to some more of your mic drops on this payroll conversation for the Cardinals next here on BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at Classic Air Care, taking care of our HVAC system. They've been taking care of people and making them comfortable since 1926. And I speak so highly of Classic Air Care because of their technicians, the knowledge that they provide, the quick response, which I think is so important when you got the HVAC system, whether it's in this blistering heat or you get the ice cold in the winter. If a problem arises, you call the company, and we've all been there before. If you use the wrong company, it takes a week to respond, or they can't get out there in a month. My HVAC went out about a month ago in the middle of it being like 99 degrees outside before humidity, and I called on a Saturday. Classic Air Care was out there Monday morning taking a look at our system. And don't believe just me. Check out the hundreds of reviews of a positive 4.8 rating up on their Google reviews about Classic Air Care. This one from Sue. Jack was amazing. He figured out a long-time problem in our kitchen and was able to get it up working. Thorough in checking our third floor radiators and our radiator itself. Thorough, cautious, Classic Air Care is the best. Give them a call today. Schedule your appointment or check them out online, classicaircare.com.
Grant Francis here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals dropped 2 of 3 over the weekend to the Nationals. The first one they dropped 10-8, 14-3 on Saturday, and then they eked out a win 4-3 after a Paul Goldschmidt walk-off home run in the 9th inning yesterday. Today, they will be taking on the Texas Rangers as they welcome in the Rangers for a 3-game set at Busch Stadium. First pitch will be at 6:45, and it'll be Andre Palante going up against Nathan Eovaldi. I'm Grant Francis. The Sports Center update's been brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Along with Tanner Hendrickson and Graham Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario, and BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. We are reacting to John Denton's piece over the weekend, speaking of how the front office has been informed that if they are bringing money in beyond this season, that money has to go out. So we're back to the payroll conversation for a Cardinals team that has dipped out of a wild card spot, now sitting a game out of the third-place wild card spot. They're a game and a half out of the second-place spot that they have held for some significant time. And in that stretch, the Cardinals have gone 4-6 in their last 10. The Diamondbacks 6-4, Mets 6-4, Padres 7-3. The Braves have started to win a little bit more, but they were scuffling there for a pretty significant amount of time. And then you got the Milwaukee Brewers at 6-4 in their last 10, holding on to that Central Division crown. And as the trade deadline approaches on Tuesday, we talked with Katie Woo earlier, and she talked about how the situation that the Cardinals are in is solely predicated off of the seat revenue and also the television deal that is ongoing. And we're taking your mic drops. We want to hear from you. You could send them over, the mic drops, on our 101 ESPN app. You can also comment on Twitter at Ferrario 101 ESPN, also at 101 ESPN, on our text line, Air Comfort Service text line, 314-399-9646. Also on our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. Grant, let's start with Andrew, because I believe Andrew is a little livid with this conversation.
All right, so if I was on the radio today, guys, man, you'd have to keep the dump button hovering, because I would be, oh boy. So we were promised that payroll was going to go up, or at least we were going to see some more competitive moves from the Cardinals after the Yadi and Albert retirement season, because they made an astronomical amount of money. So the horse bleep that's going on right now is an absolute joke. I mean, there's no excuse for it outside of the fact that this ownership group doesn't care about anything but bottom dollar. Every year, they're top in attendance, they're top in revenue, and yet they continue to run the same BS out there that, oh, well, you know, payroll's this, payroll's that. It's a joke. If they're not serious about winning, they need to sell the damn team. That's the bottom line. But my blood's boiling today after I saw that article. Absolutely lost my freaking mind.
I get it.
You guys have a good one.
I get it that the blood is boiling, and that's Andrew on our mic drops. And I think we have a little bit of news to get to.
Got some breaking news.
101 ESPN breaking news alert.
According to Ken Rosenthal from The Athletic, a three-team trade in which the Cardinals would acquire Erick Fedde, the Dodgers would acquire Tommy Edman, and the White Sox would acquire prospects is close, sources tell Ken Rosenthal and friend of the show, Katie Woo. So,
yep. Cardinals
are in the market, apparently, and look like they're closing in on a deal for Erick Fedde.
And it's confirmed by not confirmed on the actual deal, but a White Sox beat reporter is saying that it's a three-team trade with the Cardinals, Dodgers, and White Sox. And then Ken Rosenthal coming in with that one. So sounds like, and we'll continue to kind of watch to see what the final deal looks like, but Erick Fedde coming to the Cardinals, and it was either Erick Fedde or Nestor Cortez. Those were the trades that were going to fall in line with what the Cardinals were trying to do. Sell off a piece that's making, I think Tommy Edman's at about $8 million, if I'm not mistaken, and then you're bringing in somebody who's controllable beyond this year, who is going to be in your rotation. This was one of those guys. Is he a number two? Probably not. Is he pitching well? Yes. Does he fit in line with what you're trying to do with your rotation? Absolutely. This is the creativity that Katie was talking with us about over on The Athletic when she joined us a little bit ago.
Yeah, and this is going to be that offset that we're talking about, because when you look at what Erick Fedde is making this year on his contract, I believe he's at $7 million. And when you look at not just for this year, but also going into the future, because that is the thing that's been talked about. Cardinals ownership does not want the Cardinals to bring in money for next year as well. Tommy Edman making $7 million this year, so there's your offset. Tommy Edman, $7 million. What comes in, you get the $7.5 million from the White Sox. Maybe the White Sox eat like a couple dollars off of that for this year, but then it's next year where you're looking at it to where they really like this deal and why they're making this move. Tommy Edman, $9.5 million salary for next year. Now you've got $7.5 million from Fedde's contract. So you've got $2 million off of your books for next year, and that even brings in a cost control arm for Erick Fedde. I'm fascinated to see what else is in this package. Three-team deal, you know that something else has got to be going to
especially
the Chicago White Sox, a couple prospects as well. But I like the move. I said this in our group text thread before I knew about Nestor Cortez over the weekend, that, you know, once it was, if you believe, now reports came out about their trying to move money in, move money out. When the report came out that Zach Eflin was dealt to the Baltimore Orioles, Erick Fedde felt like the number one target. As much as I like Yusei Kikuchi, Fedde's got another year of control. Look at what this means for the rotation next year. You've got your 1, 2, 3 set for your rotation potentially next year. You've got Sonny Gray at the 1, Erick Fedde at the 2, and if you pick up the option on Kyle Gibson, now you've got a decent-looking 1, 2, 3 punch in your rotation for next year before you talk about potentially Lance Lynn, Steven Matz, Andre Palante, and what they look like. But I love this move for the St. Louis Cardinals. I thought Fedde made a ton of sense for them from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, you got to imagine a majority of the prospects are coming from the Cardinals that are going to the White Sox because they're getting the bigger piece in the deal. The Dodgers are getting Tommy Edman. Mike Petriello, friend of the show, he's commenting about how he doesn't understand why the Dodgers are making this trade. I got to imagine the prospects are going on the other side, and that's going to be really a telling sign for the Cardinals. Here's the thing. I'm fine with Erick Fedde because I think this was probably the best that was out there for you. But as I've stated a lot since we've talked about Erick Fedde's name, it doesn't get me excited. What it does is it fixes your rotation problem because now Miles Mikolas is not in the conversation for one of your top 3 pitchers. I think that's Gibson, Fedde, and Sonny Gray. And Mikolas becomes a 4, which I think for how he's pitched down this stretch is much better than a 4. And so that's a good upside thing to have. But like Erick Fedde doesn't have strikeout numbers. I mean, his strikeout numbers are essentially what Kyle Gibson is. He's getting somewhat lucky, I guess you can go off of right now with what he's done with the Chicago White Sox. It just worries me about what next year looks like and what he's going to look like once he gets to the Cardinals. But that's beyond the point. Now, we'll find out what the return is going to be because if Mark DeRosa's throwing out Jordan Walker's name, I hope Jordan Walker's not traded in this one. But you're getting a guy that at least stabilizes this rotation. And as we talked about in the open, T-Bone, you got to find a way to plug 3, arguably 4 holes. And this just accomplished plugging one of them by trading away a piece that was not contributing to this team this year. Now you are weak on the right-handed bats off of the bench now. There's no more hoping for Tommy Edman to come back from the injured list to be that piece for you. It's now Michael Ciani or bust in terms of the center fielder. But I don't think that's a bad thing if you trade that piece away for a guy that's in your rotation.
Yeah, we'll see what's going the other way. But either way, I'm not sure there's going to be something that I look at that I say, okay, that was too much of an overpay. Now, granted, this comes from Jeff Passan of ESPN. Erick Fedde, Cardinals, 3-team trade. White Sox will be getting a haul of prospects in return. Now, that makes me wonder if there's a significant piece going to the Dodgers in this deal because I wouldn't expect significant in terms of like a Jordan Walker, who you mentioned, to be going to the Chicago White Sox with this move. And you know what? I kind of agree. Is Erick Fedde the kind of move that I think is going to excite a lot of Cardinal fans? No, especially I would say don't look at his baseball reference page. Just trust us when we say
I just pulled
he's
it
been
up.
really good with the White Sox. But people are going to look up when he was a national, and he wasn't very good as a national. That's why he went to Japan for a year to really work on becoming a better pitcher.
What other Cardinals pitcher did this?
Very Cardinals-y is what the move is. But to your point, it does make you better.
It slots in above Miles Mikolas and arguably right there with Kyle Gibson. And that's where you want to be right now. You want to be somewhere to where when you get to the playoffs, you don't look at it and say, who the bleep is starting game 2 for us? Like, this is the equivalent. And BK had the numbers. He put a whole Excel sheet together of it. This is kind of the equivalent of what you did when you got Montgomery or Jose Quintana. Now, Montgomery had better stuff at the time. Jose Quintana is probably right around what you're acquiring in Erick Fedde, which, if we all remember correctly, was beneficial for that team when they acquired him.
Yeah, and I think I said this at the time, and I truly believe this. Your hope is that you get something similar to what you got out of Jose Quintana. You got out of Jordan, probably more of Jordan Montgomery. Quintana was unbelievable when he got here. But the more likely scenario is he just kind of upgrades the rotation marginally. But it's marginally enough to where you look at it, to your point there, that you don't feel so outmatched when you get to a game 2. Now you kind of have that guy to what we were talking about earlier, where Sonny Gray's been struggling. Now you've got a guy that can kind of take the reins and help him out and be kind of his Robin to his Batman.
Yeah, he's Tanner Hendrickson, Graham Francis. I'm Alex Ferrario. Let's do this. We'll kind of reset a little bit because if you missed it, Ken Rosenthal, John Heyman, a lot of people reporting that the Cardinals are going to be acquiring Erick Fedde from the Chicago White Sox. It's a 3-team deal that would send Tommy Edman to the LA Dodgers. And from what they're saying, Ken Rosenthal, Jeff Passan reporting a haul of prospects going to the Chicago White Sox. So we'll wait to find out what that return looks like. We'll come back and react some more to Erick Fedde being traded as a Cardinal next year on 101 ESPN. Tanner Hendrickson, Graham Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario. As we're going to skip over the junk drawer today because of the Cardinals breaking news. This junk drawer always sponsored by Fenton Bar and Grill. If you missed it, it is being reported by Ken Rosenthal and Jeff Passan that a 3-team deal is in place between the Cardinals, the White Sox, and the Dodgers that would send Tommy Edman to the Dodgers. It would send Erick Fedde from the White Sox to the Cardinals, and from Jeff Passan, a quote haul of prospects going to the Chicago White Sox, which makes an awful lot of sense that they would be getting a lot in return, T-Bone, because this is one of the top pitchers available, realistically available, I should say, that has control beyond this season. And I told you in the break, I think you can define a haul as two separate things. One is quantity, one is quality. And that's what we're waiting to find out right now to see what pieces are coming back the other side. And again, if it's that many pieces coming in return, you understand it could take a little bit of time. So like just looking at the Cardinals prospect system, T-Bone, we've talked a lot about these guys. It's hard for me to imagine that you're not going to be putting somebody in your top 5 in this package, which would be one of Tink Hence, Quinn Matthews, Victor Scott II, Sajaci, or TK Roby. Beyond that, you've got Chase Davis, Cooper Jerpy, Leonardo Bernal, Gordon Graceffo, and Juan Bincho. Those are the top 10 Cardinals prospects according to MLB.com. And you said you don't feel like it's going to be most of the prospects coming from the Cardinals.
I wonder if there's more in this deal that we don't know of yet, like the Dodgers maybe trying to get a Garrett Crochet. They've been rumored to be in on him. We'll see.
Dodgers
report from Bob Nightingale. Dodgers infielder Miguel Vargas will be one of the players going to the White Sox in the 3-way trade. That's interesting. I don't really know why that they would be going after Miguel Vargas.
That's the thing that I don't understand, because like they're getting Tommy Edman. I can't imagine that they'd be paying a price to get Tommy Edman. This would seem like it's more so the price coming from the Cardinals because they're getting the better player.
Yeah, well, now I'm looking at Miguel Vargas is a guy that kind of makes sense. Young, controllable infielder, 8% above league average.
He's not even in their
games
top 10.
So he makes sense going from the Dodgers. There's going to be mixing and matching of prospects here, because my guess is a lot of what you're going to see is some Dodgers prospects, maybe one or two, maybe even Vargas.
Yeah.
Technically, a Cardinal then goes to the White Sox as part of this deal. But, I don't think you're going to see a significant, in terms of like a major prospect leave the Cardinals organization. They're going to have to give up something here. It'll be interesting to see what this package looks like. But, when you look at Erick Fedde, you look at what his last 4 starts have been, only went 4 innings in his last start. You kind of have to wonder if the White Sox were kind of being a little cautious with him.
Makes sense.
Because of the trade deadline. But he went up against the Texas Rangers, 6 1/3, 3 hits, 2 earned runs, 5 strikeouts. His start against the Minnesota Twins, 5 innings, no earned runs, 5 strikeouts. And his start at Cleveland, the best team in the AL, 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned run, only 3 strikeouts, but another good performance from him. This is a significant upgrade for the St. Louis Cardinals, and it's the kind of move that, I wonder what they would be doing because of this money in, money out. Okay, well, they shed Tommy Edman's salary. They send him to the LA Dodgers, and he makes a ton of sense for the Dodgers. They can play him at short and move Mookie Betts to second base, which is what they've been trying to do once he gets healthy and is able to do that. And the Cardinals get the upgrade that they've been looking for, and they end up saving $2 million, not in this year's salary, but when you look ahead to next year when he's slotted with his $7 million, they save about $2 million by getting Tommy Edman off the books. Makes a ton of sense from the Cardinals' perspective.
We're curious your thoughts on the Erick Fedde trade, too, so you can send us mic drops on that. We did mic drops a little bit ago on the payroll situation, and that has basically been resolved in terms of the Cardinals sending money out, bringing money in. So now we want your reaction to Erick Fedde being acquired by the Cardinals. How do you feel about this rotation with him in it? Send us your mic drops, 101 ESPN app. You can also text them to us on Air Comfort Service text line 314-399-9646. Also our studio cams, 101 ESPN STL on our YouTube channel. And BK actually just tweeted out at BK Sports Talk of the Excel sheet that he put together. And essentially what you're looking at is a
quick update here real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, because this is going to send some prospects from the Dodgers to the White Sox. Michael Kopech, one of the top relievers on the White Sox, is in this deal and is going, I assume in this deal, is going to the Dodgers. John Heyman's reporting that. I'm assuming he's a part of this 3-team trade.
That would make sense. And now you're talking about a few more pieces that are going to the Dodgers and their prospects coming back the other way. So the haul is going to be a mix between both of them. What I was going to say, and we'll get more into this in the 1 o'clock hour and more as things keep coming out, but you're getting a similar version of Jordan Montgomery and Jose Quintana. And BK put the Excel sheet out for these guys, And what you're looking at is you're looking at better swing and miss stuff than both Montgomery and Quintana when they were acquired by the Cardinals. He walks a little bit, not as good of a walk rate compared to what Jordan Montgomery was, but better than Jose Quintana. This is essentially the Jordan Montgomery trade. You're trading a piece out to bring a piece in, and I've seen a lot of pushback on the text line saying this isn't an upgrade over what the Cardinals have. As the strikeouts per 9 by Miles Michaelis was 6 this season. Erick Fedde is bringing in, I think it's 8.1, 8.3. No, right at 8. He eats innings. He gets strikeouts. He doesn't walk. That is an upgrade over Miles Michaelis. You're not a pitch-to-contact guy. He's got some of that in him, but he's not all pitch-to-contact, and that's the upgrade that you needed.
He's got, I think he's a slightly better version at this point in his career than Kyle Gibson.
Absolutely.
And that's what they were looking for. You know, the whole goal at this trade deadline in terms of adding a starting pitcher was to bring in somebody that slots ahead of Kyle Gibson to where you can say you've got Sonny Gray 1, Erick Fedde now 2, and Kyle Gibson at 3, and then you can figure out what you're going to do. Game 4, like we saw in the postseason last year, I don't think the Diamondbacks started a starter in Game 4. They mostly ran with bullpen games when they did that, and the Rangers did basically. They had 2 starters come out of their pen. I think it was like John Gray and Andrew Heaney, and they would go in like 3-inning spurts. They basically operated as openers. Essentially, they go one time through the lineup, maybe 2, 1.5, depending on the matchup, and then they go back to their pen, bring in another starter, and just piece it together. Cardinals 1 through 3 now. Is it great? It's not great. It's not going to compare with the Philadelphia Phillies. It's not going to compare with the Dodgers if they are healthy. But it's good enough to be serviceable. And I think some of the pushback for Erick Fedde is a lot of people just hear the name, say, hey, this is a year that could be just a one-off because you look at what his history was with Washington.
I'm in that camp.
One, different pitcher because he went to overseas and was able to work with them. And we've seen major league guys, including Miles Michaelis, do this where he's gone overseas, become a better pitcher, came back and was really good early on in his first contract with the Cardinals and in 2022. And second is just take the name out of it. And if I said you're getting a starter that's gone 21 starts this year, ate 121 innings, has a 3.11 ERA, 3.76 FIP, and 8 strikeouts per 9, and is 33% above league average based on his ERA plus, and I didn't attach a name to it, people say, oh yeah, I'd be in on that.
I'd take that, yeah.
And that's where you're at right now. The Cardinals upgraded the rotation. They've done what they needed to do so far here at the deadline. This is just the first step of what should be many moves for the Cardinals to come because they still have 2 holes that they need to fix. But this is a trade that I really like, and he makes sense, and he's got a decent contract to where they were able to send out Tommy Edman and offset the salary.
And I'm going to be I really think the Cardinals might have just acquired Erick Fedde for Tommy Edman and a low-level prospect.
Yeah, it certainly is because looking that way currently.
Kopech for Vargas makes an awful lot of sense. They get Tommy Edman. Like, it really feels like Tommy Edman is the piece that's going to get, and you're probably going to see, and I don't want to say a low level, but you're not talking about a top 5 prospect in the Cardinal system, maybe not even top 10. That's the part that I'm most interested in, and we're still kind of awaiting to see what the return is overall. We do know right now Michael Kopech and Tommy Edman have been traded to the Dodgers. Kopech coming from the White Sox, Edman, of course, coming from the Cardinals. Miguel Vargas, who has played for the Dodgers this season, is going to the White Sox, and as of right now, that's all we know in terms of the quote, haul of prospects that Jeff Passan has reported on. So we'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll get you updated as more news of that return comes out. But we're also going to get into what the next move is for the Cardinals. They already acquired Erick Fedde. That's one check on a hole that we've all talked about on this Cardinals team and being their rotation. What's next? We'll discuss next here on 101 ESPN. On with Tanner Hendrickson and Graham Francis. I'm Alex Ferrario, and during a commercial break, we got an update on more of the return.
101 ESPN breaking news alert.
So according to Robert Murray, friend of the show, Robert Murray, sources are saying that the Cardinals have acquired
Big money, big money, big money, big
Tommy
money.
Pham in the deal for the White Sox on top of Erick Fedde. Tommy Pham, ladies and gentlemen, bringing that grit, that tenacity, that nastiness back to the Cardinals in this trade.
Well, hey, they got their right-handed bat that I guess can play center field.
Oh, wow.
He's played center field with the White Sox. I don't know how comfortable you feel about him.
More
playing center
importantly,
field.
what you got is you got a dude who this season for the White Sox had an OPS of 848 with a 471 slug against left-handed pitching. Now, he hasn't seen a lot of left-handed pitching. It's been significantly more right-handed pitching, and he's been fine, 677 OPS with a 359 slug against right-handed pitching. Well, you just... checklist number 2, T-Bone. You just found that bench bat that comes over for the Cardinals. This is a great move. And BK, who's probably regretting not being with us today after all the breaking news, we get the best show. BK said you get John Brebbia in this trade, and you're set. Like, this could be a one-stop shop for the Cardinals. Now, the problem with that is you're probably sending more back to the White Sox in return. I can't imagine Tommy Edman is going to warrant you a lot in the return for the trade, but now you're talking about a package of Erick Fedde, Tommy Pham, potentially something else, and what's going the other way right now, we don't know.
I'm just tinfoiling here because we don't know anything about what's in this for the Cardinals. I wonder if Carlson's going to Chicago.
Makes sense.
Because Tommy Pham's making $2.5 million, and like you got to prorate that and all that other stuff. That's about what Carlson's making this year.
Yeah.
Money in, money out, just connecting the dots. I wonder if Dylan Carlson, a guy who clearly needs a change of scenery after what we saw over the weekend, has lost faith in the coaching staff. I have to wonder if he's going to be a part of this package. But yeah, you're right. They're not just going to get Tommy Edman to go to L.A. and they're going to pick up both these players. We saw the Dodgers, they're giving up 3 of their top 30 prospects in part of this deal that's going towards the White Sox, along with a guy that's played 30 games at the big league level in Vargas. That's probably just their part of the package to go to the White Sox in exchange for the reliever Michael Kopech, who's got another year of control. Now you got to imagine that the Cardinals are going to be sending significant assets, maybe not like top 5 of their prospects, but Tommy Pham was a coveted right-handed bat. One of the best right-handed bats rental-wise that's available on the trade market, along with Erick Fedde, who is one of the top right-handed starting pitchers that's available at the trade deadline because of the control that he has next year on a cheap contract at $7 million. Whatever the assets are that the Cardinals are giving up, I think it's going to surprise us a little bit. I think there is going to be some value in here that you look at and go, I don't know if I wanted to include him in this package, but it's going to cost them a lot.
So Russell Dorsey, who is MLB insider for Yahoo Sports, just tweeted this out. Full trade, according to Yahoo Sports. Cardinals get Fedde and Pham, Dodgers get Edman and Kopech, and the White Sox get Vargas, Miller, Perez, Albertus. According to Russell Dorsey, the Cardinals did not trade anything other than Tommy Edman.
Wow.
In this deal. Now, things can change. That's Russell Dorsey. But they got Erick Fedde and Tommy Pham for Tommy, or they got Erick Fedde and Tommy Pham for Tommy Edman, according to Russell Dorsey. And if that's the case, I mean, that's an impressive deadline. That's not going to get anybody excited. Cardinals fans, I haven't even pulled up the graveyard yet or the text line because everything's just swarming in right now. You're not happy because it's not name recognition. It's not Garrett Crochet. It's not going out there and getting a big right-handed bat. But what you just accomplished is you accomplished filling 2 of your 3 massive holes. If you find a way to get a bullpen arm, because you didn't have to trade anything for this. If that's the trade, and you only shipped out Tommy Edman and brought in those 2 pieces, your entire prospect pool is still available to you. Giovanni Gallegos is still available. Dylan Carlson is still available. I know that doesn't sound like a lot because the return on those pieces don't get you excited, but other teams view it. And if you're just bringing in a bullpen piece, this might be a very successful offseason for the Cardinals. It might not look like it now, but at the end of September, if you're talking about a playoff spot, that might be more successful than we're giving them credit for.
If they're acquiring Erick Fedde for Tommy Pham, and I'm not trying to discredit Russell Dorsey's reporting. I'm curious to see if this gets reported by Ken Rosenthal and Jeff Passan if they confirm this. If that's what they get, and it just cost them Tommy Pham, who doesn't even go to the White Sox. That's a steal of a trade for the St. Louis Cardinals, because you're right. Now you have your prospect pool to go out there and try and acquire a reliever. You've also got Gallegos that they're going to try and move on to shed some salary, and Carlson is also another name that they'll probably try to move on from.
You technically could find a way to get 2 bullpen arms if you needed to.
Well, depending on the money in, money out situation, but
you're talking about shipping off 2 other guys in Gallegos and Carlson.
I'm stunned if there's nothing from the Cardinals that would be going in this trade outside of Tommy Edman to the LA Dodgers, because like I said, Erick Fedde, you look at all the whatever you want to call them, big boards, rankings of guys that are going to be available. Erick Fedde was like a top 5 starter at this point. That was going to be on the trade market.
He was higher up than Yusei Kikuchi.
Yeah, Tommy Pham was one of the top rental bats that was going to be available on the market. It's a little surprising if the Cardinals are not going to have to send out any prospects in this package, because that means that they basically got these 2 guys that they really needed in exchange for Tommy Edman, and Bob Nightingale is saying the same thing.
Bob Nightingale is saying it. You traded Tommy Edman to get Fedde and Tommy Pham.
That's an incredible trade that John Mozeliak is able to pull off.
And I mean, look, like the White Sox got a lot from the Dodgers. They got an MLB-ready infielder. They got 3 of the top 30 prospects. But the fact that you got 2 of the top guys in their categories at the deadline for Tommy Edman, I mean, that sets the Cardinals up to have more success by tomorrow's trade deadline. And I do think it's important to note that they got this deal done today. Because if you did this deal done tomorrow, you don't have enough time to pull off a trade to find more bullpen help. Now you get this done, and you can let the dust settle and find out, okay, where else are we right now, to find the ability to go get bullpen help. I didn't expect, when we opened the show today, I did not expect to talk about the Cardinals being able to fill all of their holes. Yeah. I didn't. I thought they were going to get 1, and then you'd squint and see the second guy. I thought you'd get a starting pitcher, and you'd squint to see the bullpen arm, and that's it. Well, with 24 hours to go, I think maybe a little bit more than that, you've already accomplished getting the right-handed bat for you to either play center field with Michael Ciani or just be a platoon bat and fill in defensively, because Tommy Pham is good defensively.
Go in center.
Absolutely. And you also got the starting pitcher that I know people aren't going to like it, but he profiles the most like a number 2 of starting pitchers that you realistically could acquire. And that, to me, is the most important part of what the Cardinals just pulled off.
And I will say, too, like, I was on the side of, I thought they should be considering taking a step back before they took a step forward before the show today. But the fact that they just killed 2 birds with 1 stone here in this trade, it's looking a lot better. Like, they changed my mind a little bit here. I was concerned that if they were going to try to do something like this and fill the holes that we've been talking about, they'd have to trade a prospect that would hurt them in the long run in the future. But just giving up Tommy Edman, they didn't have to do that. So hats off to John Mozeliak for this trade.
This might be one of his better trades in his career.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm just trying to sift through. Like, the Montgomery one was impressive to me. I thought that was really creative.
Well, we didn't think that. Now, granted, we may eat our words here, but you didn't think that at the time. I remember being like, "Oh, okay, this is interesting."
I mean, I liked Montgomery. I was worried about your center field defense, and I mean that showed a problem until you finally tried Tommy Edman out there. But I liked the acquisition of the starting pitcher that you got. That was the most important part. And at that time, you didn't have as many holes as you do right now. And the fact that you just filled 2 holes in 1 trade was very impressive. I'm most intrigued now knowing, and again, multiple people are reporting on this, that the deal is basically Tommy Edman from the Cardinals. The rest of the package that the White Sox received is all coming from the Dodgers. And your entire prospect crop is available to you to go upgrade your bullpen. Yeah. Now, I don't know if you get as crazy as some of these teams are in terms of paying the price to get some of the top-level arms, but I no longer am thinking of, like, just John Brebbia. I mean, you realistically could go get one of the better arms available on the market. Like, I know Garcia has been traded from the Blue Jays. Yeah. Chad Green's still available if the Blue Jays are moving on from him, and that dude's got closing ability from the right side. The possibilities are endless to make this a very successful offseason for John Mozeliak, which, hey, maybe we eat our words at the end of it, but we might eat our words on the positive side rather than the negative side.
And if you look in terms of money in, money out, which is important for the Cardinals, again, Tommy Edman's salary is what Erick Fedde's making. So there's the money in, money out. Yep. Tommy Pham's making $2 million this year. Dylan Carlson's making about $2 million. And right now, Carlson doesn't have a role on the team. So he's probably on the trade block to be moved somewhere else. And the reason they DFA'd Giovanni Gallegos, the reason we know was because why? Because their hope is to accelerate trading him to free up his money. And then, boom, there's where you're talking about trying to get that bullpen arm. And you've got your prospect pool now that you can dive into. And we'll see what they go for because we're seeing that the relief market is costing a lot. But that's another reason to your point of, hey, they've got every prospect available right now. They have not had to give up any of them for this trade. It's looking like it's going to be a really good deadline for Mo. Now, he's got to come through with a bullpen arm.
Yep, that's going to be the biggest thing.
I think right now you're probably, if this was their deadline, I would say it's probably a B-plus deadline. Him to get an A, he's going to have to go out there and add one more arm to this bullpen to really help them down the stretch.
The fact that you got him for Tommy Edman, both of those for Tommy Edman, I think I might be talking about A. And I know I'm probably just overreacting right now, but I did not expect you to be able to acquire Erick Fedde for Tommy Edman, let alone you trade Tommy Edman and get two major pieces that were available on the trade market. So very impressive move by John Mozeliak and company. Let's do this. Let's take a break. We'll get to in or out on the other side. You send us scenarios. We will tell you if we are in or out. 314-399-9646, our Air Comfort Service text line. In or out comes your way next year on 101 ESPN. Hendrickson and Graham Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario. It is time for In or Out here on 101 ESPN's BK and Ferrario. You sent us a scenario, 314-399-9646, our Air Comfort Service text line. Also on our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. We will tell you if we are in or out. If you missed the news, the trade looks to be pretty much official by now, as a couple of other reports coming out of certain guys being traded away and guys not being involved in the trade. But what we know, according to multiple sources, Ken Rosenthal, Robert Murray, Russell Dorsey, Jeff Passan, the three-way deal that is sending Tommy Edman and Michael Kopech to the LA Dodgers. Edman from the Cardinals, Kopech from the White Sox. The Cardinals are acquiring Erick Fedde and outfielder Tommy Pham, and the White Sox are receiving Miguel Vargas, who's major league ready, has been playing with the Dodgers, and 2 top 30 prospects from the Dodgers system. That's it. So breaking it down simpler terms for you, the Cardinals acquired Erick Fedde and Tommy Pham for Tommy Edman. That's where we stand right now. Guys, in or out, Tommy Pham has a big playoff moment this season.
Oh, that's a good one. I'll say in on that, because you see the Cardinals improve. Like your chances now. Still need a bullpen arm to make me feel really confident they can get back into the playoff picture. But as we've seen, Tommy Pham's a guy that can perform in October, so I'll say in. I'll say he can have a big moment for the St. Louis Cardinals if they get to October.
I'll agree with that. I'll go in, too, just because also, like, coming back to your old team and coming off of a team that was terrible, like, you get a little bit of that rejuvenated energy coming back onto the team. I could see him having a huge moment in the playoffs.
And Ben Fred tweeted this out, and I completely forgot about this. Tommy Pham wanted to be a Cardinal this offseason. Like, he came to Roger Dean Stadium and was like, I'd like to sign with the Cardinals, and they're like, nah, we're good. And then, of course, now you trade for him and get him back in one hell of a trade. T-Bone, what do you got?
Guys, in or out, we will see the St. Louis Cardinals add a bullpen arm at this year's trade deadline that slots in to the 7th inning role.
I'm in. If this would have been more of a trade on the Cardinals prospect pool, I would have said out, because I don't know if they would have paid a price. You didn't pay anything from your prospect pool. You still have Carlson and Gallegos, who I know aren't interesting for a lot of people, but like at least they're throw-ins. If you're talking about a prospect, like they realistically have the opportunity to go out there and acquire a high leverage arm. I was just looking up Chad Green's numbers for the Toronto Blue Jays. It's been freaking awesome, but it's making $10.5 million this year and next year. So that would be the cost that you'd have to figure out. But I'm in. I think they get a high leverage arm that can be in the group of 3 of already Romero, Kittredge, and Helsley.
I'm going to go in as well. On top of it, the fact that in this trade where they basically, like I said, killed 2 birds with 1 stone, you didn't have to give up anything but one piece that you are already kind of planning on trading. So it leaves the door open to use another asset to go acquire a bullpen arm like this. So yeah, I'll go in on this as well. And like, if you're going to go down this path of really buying, then just go down that path. Like, don't do it halfway. Like, go fill all your holes, all your problems that you have.
Go get Pete Fairbanks.
Oh, it'll be a lot.
Grant, what do you got for us?
All right,
I'm in, though.
In or out, this trade that John Mozeliak just pulled off is going to be considered the biggest steal of this deadline by any team.
Oh, in. I don't know how you won up this. Like, unless somebody just
gave up truly like nothing.
You gave up nothing. You gave up a dude who has a high ankle sprain and has been out all season for 2 of the top players in their position at the trade deadline. I don't know how you won up that. I mean, the Dodgers kind of got a steal, too, to be able to get Tommy Edman and Michael Kopech, but they gave up 2 top 30 prospects and a major league player that was on their roster. I mean, unless we're talking like somebody getting Tariq Skubal or Garrett Crochet for cash, I'm not sure how you won up this.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is going to be looked at almost like what the Sonny Gray signing was in the offseason. Everybody in the offseason said, hey, that's probably the best value deal you get. Sure, you're paying him whatever it is, $25 million a year, but Sonny Gray at 3 years at his age is an ace, and the Cardinals got that on a really good deal, didn't spend a ton of money. I think this is going to be the kind of trade that you look at, and a lot of people across baseball are going to say, man, the White Sox got fleeced because they got 3 players in return, 2 of them top 30 prospects, all for a package of 3 guys that should have really netted them a return in Tommy Pham, Michael Kopech, and an Erick Fedde.
Not to derail the segment here, but I just had a question because I mean, I've been here 2.5 years. I've never seen this text line so positive about John Mozeliak.
Yeah.
What do you think this does?
Oh, they're happy with Little Mo?
They're happy with Little Mo. I can't wait for that presser.
What do you think this does for John Mozeliak's legacy as a Cardinals GM? Because, like,
It's
I don't
definitely
think this would
positive.
help ownership's view
Yeah.
from the fan base.
It's
but
positive because it showcases your creativity, and they typically don't do moves at the deadline. And now we're talking 2 of the last 3 years, them being aggressive enough to upgrade the team. But I still don't think it matters until the postseason. Like, I don't think anybody cares about what Little Mo does at the trade deadline until you do something in the postseason, and that's really what this is going to come down to. It sucks because Mo should be getting credit. Like, he was basically told, you can't spend any more money than what we have right now. Good luck making a move. And he just pulled off an acquisition for a starting pitcher who's a number 2 for your team right now and a bat that helps you against left-handed pitchers. But I don't think it matters.
Yeah, I think this will be a trade that should be well known in the Mo era, but it'll really be solidified with a deep October run, especially if you see contributions from Erick Fedde as that number 2 starter. If he goes on a run like Jordan Montgomery did, whether it be last year when he was a Cardinal or Quintana does, and then alongside like Tommy Pham, if he performs and he helps the Cardinals against left-handed pitching and they're able to go on a run in October, then yeah, I think this will definitely help Mo's legacy because, again, this is a steal of a trade. I mean, when you look at what they gave up, essentially gave up nothing for 2 of the best available, both 1 position player and 2 pitcher that was on the starting market.
All right, let's get to some of your scenarios. 314-399-9646 from the 618. In or out, Tommy Edman will be a Gold Glover for the LA Dodgers next year.
I will say, I'll say out because he's probably going to play shortstop for him.
Do they move?
They're going
That's
to probably
back
look
to the
Mets-
outfield? I mean,
well,
that's
second base is probably where they're
second
going to
base,
put
yeah,
him.
because Gavin, that's
because
smart.
they don't like, based on every game I've watched of the LA Dodgers, they're basically, the broadcast has been like, yeah, wouldn't it be cool if Betts was at second base? So I'll say out just because shortstop's such a loaded position, but if Tommy Edman gets healthy and his wrist is not going to majorly affect his swing, and he ends up being the league average bat that he was as a St. Louis Cardinal, that's a great addition for the LA Dodgers, essentially just taking on his money rather than having to give up anything for Tommy Edman. They basically got Tommy Edman for free.
Yeah. In or out, Cardinals now have the best rotation in the NL Central. Oh, so far out. So far out.
Wouldn't go that far.
I mean, it's the Pirates.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't beat Skeens, Jones, and Keller.
Yeah.
You can't beat that. Now, if you want to say second best, I'll hear it.
Yeah.
But the Brewers are still at least proving it. I haven't seen the Cardinals prove it yet.
I don't think when you look at like the Brewers rotation outside of like Freddie Peralta, nobody else really like strikes fear into
I get it, but right now Sonny Gray doesn't strike fear into me if I'm a batter for how he's pitched, and I think I could say the same thing for Miles Michaelis and Lance Lynn because I know what the inevitability
sure, but those guys
is.
aren't like your top 3.
Oh, I'm with you, but
know?
they're saying they asked the rotation, and like rotation-wise, you're a liability with Lance Lynn and, in my opinion, Miles Michaelis back there. From the 314, in or out, the Cardinals now have the best shot at winning the NL Central. Man, this text line is super positive today.
Best shot to win the NL Central now. I'll say in because I think Milwaukee's got to add something, and they still haven't done anything. At least I've not seen them add anything yet, and we're just talking about rotation, they need pitching help because they're dealing with all kinds of injuries. They just lost Christian Yelich. Doesn't sound like for the year. Sounds like he's going to try and rehab and come back, so that's a significant piece that's come out of their offense. The Cardinals are quietly positioning themselves to really make a push for the Milwaukee Brewers. So I will say in that they've positioned themselves well enough. Will they catch them? That I don't know. I'll be able to answer that a little bit better when the Brewers see what they do at the trade deadline.
From the 314, in or out, Fedde is the number 2 starter instantly.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, you can make an argument, I guess, for Kyle Gibson, but I mean, for me, my rotation is now set up. Sonny Gray, Erick Fedde, Kyle Gibson, Miles Michaelis, should be Andre Palante, but it's going to be Lance Lynn.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm 100% in on this. I think he slots ahead of Kyle Gibson. Gibson falls more into the role that he probably should have been in the whole time, which is as the number 3. and now you've even got depth to where if they are going to send down Palante just so they have somebody that's stretched out in the minors, now you've got 6 starters. Now you start to feel a little bit better about that depth to where if they have another rain out later on this year, hey, now we don't have to go to a bullpen game. We can call up an Andre Palante, and now you feel really good about your depth from a rotation standpoint. And you got Steven Matz coming back, which sounds like they're going to stretch him out as a starter as well.
In or out, the Cardinals are going to DFA Dylan Carlson.
I'm going to say out on this because I think they're going to trade him. And I actually don't feel confident about that answer. I'm going to say out because I think they're just going to try and trade him straight up. My guess is they're going to try and include him in whatever bullpen arm they're trying to get.
Okay, but what about if they aren't able to trade him? Do you think he ends up getting DFA'd?
Because they're going to have to do money in, money out. That's what makes this a little tougher. I'll say out still. I think if anything, they would hope to hold on to him and trade him in the offseason for a bullpen arm. Now, when I say that, don't yell at me, text line. When I say bullpen arm, I mean essentially the Tyler O'Neill trade. Which does anybody remember who they got in the Tyler O'Neill trade?
Yeah.
Who?
Riley O'Brien.
Wrong. I think they got Nick Robertson, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, really?
Riley O'Brien was from Seattle.
Fernandez was the Rule 5 pick.
But that's my point. Is it's going to be an arm that you don't really recognize, but he's probably on the 40-man, which Nick Robertson is.
Yeah.
So it's a guy that can help you who could ride the shuttle up and down. If Robertson hadn't struggled in AAA, he probably would be a guy that could be riding that shuttle between AAA and St. Louis. But my guess is that they may still try to hold on to Carlson if he's not included in another trade post-deadline, rather than just DFA him and potentially lose him for nothing, even though they want to get some of that salary probably off of the books. My guess is they would rather hold on to him going into the offseason to potentially move him for a bullpen arm.
So let's take a break. When we come back, now that the dust is settled on this trade, we'll talk a little bit about the bullpen help that they'll be searching for, but also I want to get into what this does for the Cardinals' chances now in the playoff race since they've been dipped out of the wild card. Where do we think this helps the team? We'll discuss that next year on 101 ESPN. Alex Ferrario with you to talk about Circa Sports Illinois. It's the app that you need to download as we get closer to postseason action in baseball. Of course, NFL season is starting up real soon, but I want to hone in on baseball futures because when you make futures bets, you need to be doing it on Circa because you're bringing in the most money possible. That's their big seller are these future bets. And because we're also optimistic with the Cardinals now after a trade that they just pulled off, I just got the updated lines on Circa versus other sportsbook apps. I'm looking at 2 different sportsbook apps that have the Cardinals at winning the NL Central at plus 750. If you make that same bet over on the Circa Sports Illinois app, plus 850 to win if the Cardinals win the NL Central. That's why you need to be downloading and betting on the Circa Sports Illinois app. I love it because I love the exclusivity of it where they basically tell you, go ahead, check out the other apps. We know you'll come back because of our odds, whether it's the high app limits that other people have to where basically Circa's telling you, you bring in the most money possible, or those tight money line splits, the future bets, you make your bets over at Circa Sports Illinois. So download the app today. Get ready for the postseason run for baseball and football season. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. If you missed it, the big news of the day for the Cardinals, they have acquired starter Erick Fedde and outfielder Tommy Pham from the Chicago White Sox in a 3-team trade with the Dodgers and the White Sox. All they had to give up in the trade was Tommy Edman. So the Cardinals trade Tommy Edman to Chicago, and they receive Erick Fedde and Tommy Pham. Of course, the Cardinals in action tonight, starting a 3-game series against the Texas Rangers. First pitch will be at 6:45, and it'll be Andre Palante going up against Nathan Eovaldi. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Along with Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario. Cardinals pull off a trade today. You heard Grant update you on it, where the Cardinals get Erick Fedde and Tommy Pham for Tommy Edman. How about this, T-Bone? Spot Rack just tweeted this one out. So the Cardinals, we talked about money in, money out. So
yeah.
Tommy Edman this season, the rest of the season, he's making $2.3 million. Erick Fedde, $2.5 million. So you had to spend $200,000 there, which isn't easy. And Tommy Pham's making $1 million.
Now I'd cancel the trade.
Pham's off the books after this season. Erick Fedde next year is making $7.5 million, while Tommy Edman is making $9.5 million. John Mozeliak not only just pulled off a great move, but you just saved $2 million for next season.
That's what I've been saying is when you look at when they've been talking about, not adding payroll to next year, well, now they just saved $2 million off of payroll for next season, which is an unbelievable trade from John Mozeliak to be able to acquire a guy that will slot into number 2 in your rotation, the right-handed bat that you've been looking for, and all of it to where you didn't have to give up truly anything to the Chicago White Sox. It's an unbelievable trade that no one would have seen coming, because Erick Fedde, you would have thought, okay, so we've seen some starters get moved, like what's his name from, why am I drawing a blank suddenly, that got traded to Baltimore, Zach Eflin.
Oh, yeah, Eflin. Mm-hmm.
Zach Eflin, you saw a couple prospects go in exchange for him. He's making more money than Erick Fedde is next year. And again, the team that acquired him had to give up, I think it was 2 or 3 prospects to get the deal done. The Cardinals didn't have to give up anything to the Chicago White Sox, the team that they're actually acquiring the player for. The player they gave up went to a separate team in this 3-team deal, which is just unbelievable that John Mozeliak was able to pull this off.
Which is why you need to set your sights high for the bullpen arm. And I understand it's probably the greediness talking right now because you did pull this trade off, but I think the other hole that you have, to me, is one of your biggest weaknesses, if not your biggest weakness. I understand your offense has not been good against left-handed pitching, but like we've talked a lot about, you can't upgrade that with anybody outside. It's going to have to be internal improvement. Tommy Pham does add a little bit, but it's internal improvement. You fixed your rotation, but your rotation has been good. Even if it's faltered, it's been good all season long. Your problem has been your bullpen, because when that goes, you don't have any other offense or other weapon to use in tight ball games. And you're talking about having to get through 6th, 7th, 8th so you could get to the 9th. And Kittredge has been a little up and down. Romero has basically been lost, and beyond those 2 guys in Helsley, you haven't had much. I don't know what this looks like because the cost is significant to acquire a bullpen arm. We've seen it in multiple trades so far, but I think this is the move you have to set your sights high on. And I don't know who that is. There's plenty of guys out there, but because you didn't have to spend a lot to get these 2 players, I think this is where you take that next step and say, now let's get aggressive. Now let's go get that bullpen arm that does put us back into the elite conversation for an area of our team. Because I don't think Fedde makes your rotation elite. I don't think Pham makes your offense elite. If you go out there and you get a high leverage arm that slots into the 7th or 8th inning for you, that makes your bullpen elite, which makes your team a lot more dangerous.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think if you can get a reinforcement, you've got the potential for an elite bullpen. It just comes down to, does JoJo Romero find swing and miss again? Because you would have, and maybe you don't even need JoJo to bounce back if you get another arm, because you'd have Fernandez, Kittredge, Helsley, and insert bullpen arm required here.
You hope Riley O'Brien comes back, and I mean, if Steven Matz is going to be used as a rotation piece, then maybe that puts Matthew Liberatore into a high leverage spot.
Exactly, and because they didn't have to give up a significant amount in this deal, They have the prospect pool available to them, which you have mentioned, and we've seen a lot of the guys that have been traded so far at this year's deadline for the relief market has been expensive. It's been about 3 top 30 prospects has been what the going rate has been, and we saw that in a couple of trades.
Just saw it with the Dodgers one.
Yeah, they got a guy that had control. Now, maybe it's one less prospect if you get a guy that's a rental. If you get a guy that's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, maybe it's only 2 top 30 prospects. Maybe you don't even have to include a guy in your top 15. Just depends on who you're acquiring, but it certainly puts, it's going to sound weird, puts a little bit more pressure back on Mo.
It does.
Hey, whoa, you just pulled off this awesome trade. Now what's next?
Because but that's Cardinals fans, though. That's the Cardinals fans, though. It's what's next. It's not about what you just do now, because like we said, this has nothing to do with Mo's legacy and everything to do with what happens in October.
100%. And they do need a bullpen arm to help them through October, because we talk about this, I think we talked about it last year, and I think it still holds true. When you look at the teams that have success in October, you got to have 3 impact bats. And right now the Cardinals, I would say, have Burley, Contreras, and you're probably looking for somebody to take over as that third one.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to
win, but it's not the same type of impact because you got no power.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't necessarily have to just say, oh, it's got to be Goldie, it's got to be Arenado. No, if Corbin gets hot for a month, he can be that. If Newport gets hot in October, he can be that. Yeah. Hell, if Tommy Pham gets hot and starts playing against right-handed pitching, Tommy Pham can be that.
It's funny you said that. I looked up Tommy Pham's numbers because this is the 4th time he's been traded at the deadline. It was from the Cardinals to the Rays. It was from, I think it was...
Last year it was to the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, last year was to the Diamondbacks, and then there was one where, he went to Cincinnati from San Diego. So when he went to the Rays, he had over 1,000 OPS. The Reds one didn't go well, 694, but when he went to the Mets, or from the Mets to the Diamondbacks, he had an 820 OPS. So, this is a dude that has performed well when he gets acquired at post-trade deadline.
Yeah, so you need 3 impact bats. You need 3 impact starters, and you at least can see the path now for the Cardinals towards that. Because, again, you slide in Erick Fedde. He's got decent swing and miss stuff. If he put up a 3.11 ERA in the postseason, you'd feel pretty good about that from your number 2 starter. So you've got that now in Gray, Fedde, and you hope Gibson can kind of right the ship or doesn't go through second-half struggles like he has historically in his career. And then it just comes down to, do you have 4 impact bullpen arms? Right now they've got 3. They're looking for 1 more. If you can get that, and then you just have to rely on 1 guy to kind of slot in with Wilson Contreras and Alec Burleson in your lineup to get hot, okay, now we're talking about a formula for the Cardinals to go on a potential October run. But again, it just comes down to, you got to get that bullpen arm, and then somebody internally is going to have to really step it up in terms of offense.
Yeah, because look, as much as we are getting excited, and we should be getting excited about this, I know there's been a couple of people on our text line that says, oh, geez, one thing happens and you guys become ultimate Cardinals homers. Look, this is something that Cardinals fans should get excited about, because it's been ingrained in my head that the Cardinals don't do this at the deadline, and they just pulled off a very impressive trade. But you still have to make yourself a playoff team. And Tommy Pham, although it helps, doesn't really change it that much. Erick Fedde absolutely helps, but we don't know what Erick Fedde is. We see Erick Fedde with the White Sox, but what's he going to look like with the Cardinals? My guess is it's going to be better because it's more of a pitcher-friendly ballpark. You've got a guy who does have some swing and miss stuff, but your path still has to go through a couple of teams that also have improved. And we didn't get to a roundup today. We'll do this tomorrow, but the Diamondbacks are getting healthier. They're a significantly better offensive team than you, and they're plus 26 in run differential. The New York Mets, they just lost Kodai Senga. Do they make a move to go out there and get another starting pitcher, or do they kind of stand pat? But their offense has been better than you. And then you got the San Diego Padres, who have improved, and they've got a better offense than you. So if you want to make the playoffs, it still feels like, and I didn't even mention the Pittsburgh Pirates who are on your heels, it still feels like you got to catch the Milwaukee Brewers. And because the Brewers have lost Christian Yelich for the season, and because their pitching staff has been okay, and I'm not sure if they make any big-time move at the deadline, that's your path. Your path is to catch the Brewers. And you're 6 games behind them, and those 6 games are the 6 games you find a way to play against the Milwaukee Brewers. But what you did is you set yourself up for success, at least for the rest of the regular season, in terms of your rotation has gotten better, which should help that run differential. Tommy Pham helping out in the left-handed pitchers matchup, that helps you significantly. You've got a path now, but you actually have to capitalize on that path and then go out there and make yourself better. Because if you go get this bullpen arm we're talking about, T-Bone, I would argue you're better than the New York Mets, depending on what the Diamondbacks do at the deadline, the Padres do more at the deadline, and the Brewers do at the deadline. You might be talking about being up there with Milwaukee, one of the top 4 teams in the National League.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about, where is the one spot that I didn't feel comfortable, like we talked, if the Cardinals don't fix their three holes, what's the one that you say, okay, what can you squint at and say you don't need to necessarily add? Well, starting pitching wasn't that one for me because you didn't have somebody internally that could really vault themselves ahead of Kyle Gibson. So you had to go out and find that guy. They got that in Erick Fedde. To me, they didn't have a right-handed bat internally, or at least they didn't truly believe that they didn't have one, because otherwise we'd see Ivan Herrera on the roster. So what do? You go out and get Tommy Pham. I don't think they've got a bullpen arm that they would feel comfortable that can slot into that kind of third right-handed role that can come into the sixth inning. They tried Roy Croft. He hasn't really been that guy. They've tried Leahy. He's been good, but he's not that guy. They're hoping maybe Gio would be that guy coming off of injury. He wasn't that guy, and they DFA'd him. So I do expect they're going to address that bullpen spot so they can make that run at the Milwaukee Brewers that you're talking about. Or worst case scenario, you at least fortify all your weaknesses to where you say, okay, when we get to October or hopefully push for a wild card spot, it's hard to find a hole on our roster that we really don't feel comfortable with.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're talking just generally about if you're acquiring a starter, a bat, and you also need a relief pitcher, the easiest one to go out and get would be a relief pitcher, correct? Compared to the other two?
In terms of ease, there's a lot of them. It's going to cost you, though. Like, the easiness in terms of there's not a whole lot of starting pitchers that matched a number 2 for you. Like, there was probably like 2 or 3 guys. So it's easier to go get a bullpen arm because there's a lot of them. It's definitely easier than the bat because there just weren't a lot of impact bats. But I don't know your thoughts on this, T-Bone, but easiness and availability, yes. Easiness and the cost, no, because those are going to cost you significantly because there's only a few high leverage guys, and that's what teams. That's just the recipe for postseason success, is being lights out.
Bullpen arms are always available, so I would deem it easier to find than, starting pitching costs quite a bit and it comes at a premium. Bullpen arms, you can get those guys for kind of back end top 30
and that was sort of my thought process.
I think that's a kind of move that, like, it wouldn't shock me. The Cardinals, it would be more shocking to me if they said, well, too expensive. It's probably too expensive for those top end guys. Tanner Scott of Miami. I'm trying to think of the other. Kyle Finnegan of the Washington Nationals.
Fairbanks from Tampa Bay.
Pete Fairbanks. Like those guys that top end, like tier 1, yeah, they're not going to be shopping in that. That will be too expensive. Tier 2 and on, yeah, you can find those guys. And
John Brebbia,
you'll probably
things
look
like
at
that.
Yeah, you'll probably look at the trade and go, oh, well, that's a name recognition prospect. It's not somebody, though, that you say, oh, wow, they really gave that up.
Tanner Hendrickson, Graham Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario. We'll take our final break. We'll come back and rewind it next here on 101 ESPN. And make sure you come hang out with me this Friday from 4 to 6 at Federated Auto Parts Raceway, I-55. It's gearing up for the Ironman 55. I've done these for, I think, 3 of the last 4 years. It's a really fun event. The World of Outlaws NOS Energy Sprint Cars back for a high-speed weekend, including the most challenging race on the tour, which is the Ironman 55. Don't miss out. The extravaganza taking place Friday and Saturday at Federated Auto Parts Raceway, I-55, Pevely, Missouri. I'll be out there on Friday from 4 to 6. You can get all the details over at 101ESPN.com. As we close things down today, we had Katie Wu on the show prior to the Erick Fedde, Tommy Pham trade. She talked a little bit about the payroll conversation, money in, money out, and the Cardinals' approach at Tuesday's trade deadline. If you missed that or anything from our show today with the breaking news of the Cardinals acquiring Erick Fedde and Tommy Pham from the White Sox and essentially traded away Tommy Edman, that was it. You can check all that out on our podcast page, 101ESPN.com, which is presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Center. So again, for people that may have missed it, Cardinals trade Tommy Edman to the Dodgers. They acquire Erick Fedde and Tommy Pham from the White Sox, and the Cardinals don't pay anything to the White Sox. The White Sox got 2 top 30 prospects from the Dodgers and 1 Major League Baseball infielder from the Dodgers. Dodgers also, by the way, got one of the better relievers from the White Sox and Michael Kopech. Cardinals paid Tommy Edman. That's it. And somebody messaged me on Twitter a little bit ago, and they asked the question, is this up there with Doug Armstrong's trade of acquiring Ryan O'Reilly? And I know this is going to sound crazy because I'm the Blues guy. I'm the homer. This is better than any move Doug Armstrong has pulled off. Better than the Shen one, better than the Ryan O'Reilly one, because you didn't give up anything for these guys. These are 2 of the better players available at the deadline. And you didn't give up anything. You gave up a guy who has not played this season and might not play until September with a high ankle sprain. And you got Erick Fedde and Tommy Pham. This would be the equivalent of the Cardinals or the Blues trading Yori Laterra for Braden Shen. Just that. But they had to trade 2 first-round picks. They traded Tage Thompson for Ryan O'Reilly. This is a massive trade, and will go down as, depending on what the Cardinals do, because they still have to make the playoffs, they have to have success.
These guys got to play well, too.
They have to play well. If Fedde falters, if Tommy Pham is not the bat against lefties like we thought, then things change. But on paper, this is one of the better moves that John Mozeliak has pulled off in his tenure. At least I'll go back since 2011.
Yeah, because we were talking about this during the break. Because, again, they're not sending anything to the Chicago White Sox. Edman's going to the Dodgers, and they're basically getting Fedde in.
White Sox getting nothing from the Cardinals.
And again, Erick Fedde was one of the top controllable arms on the market. You know, it was him and Zach Eflin, who we talked about last week.
Yeah, because Bassett was off the table. Kikuchi was a rental. Yeah. You weren't getting any of these other guys. Flaherty's a rental. This was it.
And the reason I bring all of that up is because Zach Eflin, who was traded on Friday, well, he netted 3 players in return in the deal with the Baltimore Orioles. And the Orioles, and again, prospect ratings, you know, A, it just depends on where you're looking, and B, it's not the same. Baltimore's number 17 prospect isn't the same as the Cardinals' number 17 prospect. But in that deal, the Baltimore Orioles gave up 2 top 20 prospects. And then on the relief side of things, essentially what the White Sox got was what they should get, which is 2 decent prospects and a guy that had major league experience, because Jason Day, who got traded on Friday or over the weekend as well, netted 3 top 15 prospects from the San Diego Padres going back to Tampa Bay. So essentially, the White Sox traded away one of the top starters for nothing when they probably should have gotten 3 players in return. Traded away one of the top rental right-handed bats on the market, which they probably should have gotten at least a prospect for. But then they actually got the real value in the reliever, but the Cardinals didn't give up anything for that. It's just
hell of a trade.
It's a hell of a trade pulled off by John Mozeliak, and I just don't understand what the White Sox are looking at to where they say, this is the move that we should make.
Who cares? Poorly run organization benefits St. Louis. We'll be back tomorrow. BK will be with us. Huge shout out to Graham for helping out. Fastlane reacts next on 101 ESPN.